I reckon it too.
No disagreement here.
I think that, I don't have I can't show the movie right now, because it's still a little bit to do. But there is this. I have this. I don't know if this is helpful. See that?
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Is this stereo?
As a community, we're able to make this thing happen. But it's Aquaman, it's Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, and then Superman. You're really talking about a mythological group. The scale started to get bigger and bigger, and we would notice, oh my gosh. And at first, remember, because it was like a bus stop in Comic-Con, and then a billboard in Times Square, and then on the anniversary of Justice League, and it just goes completely nuts. As a community, we're able to make this thing happen. Really, a bus stop in Comic-Con, and then a billboard in Times Square just goes completely nuts. A mythological group. But it's Aquaman, it's Wonder Woman, Flash, Cyborg, and then Superman.
The world needs private screening.
So, we are back again for another episode of Private Screening. We're very excited because this is a long story.
Testing. It's so long you could tell it in a 4-hour. No spoilers though. Excuse me.
You can't spoil it, even though we won't change anything. It's not like there is spoilers.
Of course not, because if you've seen. I'm getting too far deep into it. I apologize. Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, whenever it is you're watching this, if you're watching it at all. Thanks for tuning in to part 2 of Private Screening. I am Sam.
And I'm Grant, because this is the second episode.
So for the time being, as we're recording this, it is April 10th. It's a Saturday.
It's actually been a while since our last recording, actually, because...
Really?
Wasn't the Tom and Jerry one, that was like in late February?
I want to say, yeah, I think it was, because it was well before mid-March when...
Yeah, when Snyder, we were talking about, the Snyder Cut's coming up at, the end of the Tom and Jerry episode, so there's obviously going to be a huge passage of time.
Yeah, so I guess...
The difference.
It'll be interesting. We can look back on it and say, oh, we were wrong, or we were right.
We can laugh at our predictions and how wrong they were.
Oh no, don't say that.
Oh.
Yeah, guess we'll just go for it. Before we get started, Grant, how have you been?
I've been good because end of the school year basically because freshman at Baylor, we won nationals. So I want to dedicate this episode
after that. You're right. Congratulations.
That's right. So. I would like to dedicate this episode to the Baylor Bears men basketball team this year, if that is acceptable. But the point is, statistically, we're number 1. Gonzaga never had a lead over us. We won. That's it. We're champs. I got a T-shirt for it. So, what are you going to do about it?
Unlike the movie we're about to talk about, which is not number 1. But I'm glad to hear that. I saw that you watched Green Book, too. Is that correct? I didn't look at it, but...
Yeah, it was kind of funny because it was on campus, we had movie night where it's go watch a movie at the football stadium, and we watched Incredibles 2. So I'm like, that's a fine movie.
Muy epic.
It's okay. Not as good as the original, but not bad, I would say. And then I remember I wanted, because I have plans to watch other movies until I leave campus. So I'm like, okay, one weekend I want to get Green Book, but then my roommate's like, hey, you want to watch it tonight? I'm like, okay. And then I watched it, and I'm not sure if I watched it.
You were floored. It was amazing, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. It won Best Picture for good reason. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, you say
Oh,
that
indeed.
like it's not the Academy Awards that we're talking about.
Dude, it's the Academy. The Academy, in its entire history of nearly 100 years.
Oh, of course.
When has the Academy ever made any mistakes ever? That it's impossible. Statistically speaking, they are just absolutely killing it.
They are without bias. But anyway.
Oh, of course. So
We are coming to you live at the wake of a few more COVID developments that I guess we'll just get right into. COVID developments in regards to the entertainment business with TV shows and movies, which is the subject. So we'll
Yes.
just get right into that before we do anything else. First things first, big announcement today that I just found out, and it'll be linked in all the episodes too. But as of now, as of the time we're recording this, April of 2021, as of September 14th, kind of close to November 2 of 2020, all states have lifted theater mandates to some extent. So some of them have been opened 100% to their full capacity. Some of them have been reopened 25 to 50%. But the important thing is that under certain state guidelines and restrictions, even in Hawaii, which is kind of cool, all theaters are basically reopened. And that goes for major local markets too. So if you go to Miami or Atlanta, Los Angeles, all the theaters will be open there too, which is huge considering all of the blank space that we've essentially had from the period mid-March 2020 to basically, I don't know.
now.
Like now. Yeah, basically. But yeah, I thought that was a really interesting jumping off point, and I hadn't. This is from I suppose I should cite my source too. This is from the actual NATO COVID-19 like state government regulation database. They managed to like compile all the theater laws into one spreadsheet. That's very helpful. Just scrolling down it
that's
now,
neat.
it's a very useful resource for something like this that we're talking about. I would really recommend it. But anyway. The first thing I want to kind of start with today and kind of talk about is the supposed or maybe even potential resurgence with theaters moving forward, and how that really could potentially remain prevalent in the coming months or kind of just sizzle out. Because it should be no secret, Godzilla versus Kong came out recently and kind of single-handedly broke every single COVID record, and is really getting theaters back on the map, I guess you could say, with capacity and tickets sold. I think it made something in the 20 millions on its opening weekend, which compared to everything else is major. I mean, it's kind of a double-edged sword too, because Croods 2 was the reigning champ before Kong versus Godzilla, but whatever, I guess. Anyway, I guess.
Well, I mean, it's a worthy a contender for the crown, so
It is.
Not like,
it's still up there.
yeah.
I
mean, I guess like looking at it, when I would look at this whole situation, it's kind of interesting because when COVID hit, it kind of felt like everything just like stopped. So
just
like
at once.
yeah, because it was like I remember like one of the big movies I was like looking at before COVID hit everything was like Black Widow, because I wanted to like keep up with the MCU and see like, is that going to keep going? Are they still going to have some steam, or is it going to kind of fizzle out?
Yeah.
But then COVID hit, and then it's like, okay, everything's pretty much canceled. So, and it was interesting because then stuff that was like a month from getting released had to find like alternatives. So you had animated movies like Scoob and then Trolls 2. They like did stuff with streaming services. And then Mulan was responsible for that whole like Disney Plus premiere access you got to pay $30 for. But it's like weird because I remember like I have these like Cinemark spam emails that always like pop up in my email list every now and then. And it's so weird because it's like, okay, watch this movie starring a popular actor. So it's like, here's a movie with Benedict Cumberbatch. And it's like, this doesn't even look like a movie. This just looks like actual filler. Like, no, like there was one with Russell Crowe, and I'm like, what is this? Like these feel like they were genuinely pumped out in like 2 months. And like they're trying to make up, because like when theaters started to reopen, I noticed it was like, okay, we can't play anything new, so let's just play a bunch of old stuff and like make you pay super cheap tickets. So that's how I got to see stuff like Mad Max Fury Road in theaters.
That's the big thing.
A really good movie. Yes. But like because it's interesting because it's like, okay, now here's all this new stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to watch the new stuff. It doesn't look appealing.
Yeah.
Like, the only one of those movies that I would say that I actually want to see is that one Nobody that's got the guy from Breaking Bad.
He's also, you watched Incredibles 2 recently. He's also the guy who wants to bring supers back.
Yes, Winston Dever, I believe. It's funny because, like, when I first saw Incredibles 2, I hadn't seen Breaking Bad.
Yep.
But then when I watched it, I'm like, why is Saul Goodman helping out Mr. Incredible?
What's going on here? I don't know.
What is this, a crossover episode?
Yeah, and then I guess going back to reactionary responses to releases, you have stuff like No Time to Die too, which has been delayed over a year now, basically. Looking at it, a lot of like big blockbuster things have either gone straight to streaming services. In the case of Trolls, I guess if you want to call that a blockbuster, Trolls 2, if you want to call that a blockbuster. Some have kind of done that HBO Max thing where they'll do both.
Oh, yeah.
And then we have stuff like No Time to Die. And I guess the good thing, since like No Time to Die very obviously wants to have that theater release, I guess the good news is that with this potential reawakening, I guess, of theaters, then that could come back. I guess the big question is whether or not it's really well-founded and if we are looking at a major turning point right now. Because I guess it's true that... I guess the stigma, I want to say, around COVID-19 has kind of lessened to a certain extent just with all the vaccines that are out there now, or at least in the United States. No, I'm pretty sure we have all 4 of those all over the world, right?
Right. I think that's safe to say.
Okay, well, don't quote me on that. I can't speak for the United States. With all the vaccines going around, it kind of looks like COVID is something that is getting a little better for those who are becoming more comfortable with it. And then... on the opposite end of the spectrum, too, you have stuff like, you have other developments like HBO Max exclusives, such as our favorite Tom and Jerry, coming back in theaters when they were previously just on streaming services. So I want to say responses like that are kind of proof that theaters kind of see this as a turning point and are trying to utilize it as best they can. I'm just not sure. So I guess they're apparent, but will they last is, I guess, what I'm trying to get at. Because... even though we are seeing stuff like this, we also have other things that I'm noticing, like the strengthened relationships between production companies like Disney and Lionsgate with corresponding streaming services. Like Knives Out. Knives Out has just been bought by Netflix, I think, and they're going to have 2 sequels released on their own streaming service now. So I guess they were just like didn't want to risk releasing those in theaters, so they just turned to that. Like stuff like that, as well as another deal that we'll be going over soon, kind of suggests the opposite too. That production companies are getting more comfortable with streaming services. So I don't know. I guess we just gotta see.
I mean, the way I'm kind of seeing it is like we just got to figure out who's going to like start like going back to the movie theaters again. Because I think the problem right now is like. There's not a big movie that everyone's like, oh, we like gotta see it in theaters. Like, I mean, there isn't that movie that people want to go out.
Did you say Kong versus Godzilla?
I mean, I know that like some people might want to, but I don't think it's a big enough of a draw yet. Because I think what needs to happen is like COVID kind of needs to just like get away for real. Yeah. So like no more like kind of masks and like get back to a air quotes normal state. Yeah. And then there's just got to be that like one big movie that's kind of like, okay, this is kind of like the unofficial landmark, like welcome back, come to theaters. This is it. Blah blah blah.
That might
so, like,
be No
Time to Die. It could be Black
Die.
Widow. It could be No Time to Die. There's that Denis Villeneuve film, Dune.
Okay, yeah, that's the one my dad was looking forward to because we both read the book.
Yeah. Plus, I think he was responsible for Blade Runner 2049. Really want to see that movie, but I haven't because I got a movie poster that won't stop. Ever. So,
Dies.
one day.
In a forever maze of movie posters.
And I will put a Ryan Gosling gif as the caption.
And it does depend on, like, the responses, too. Yeah, what actually
but I think it's just
reeks in a profit.
Yeah. It's just, that's how I'm seeing it. COVID just kind of needs to, like, fizzle out for good, and then there needs to be that one movie that's like, come on, the water's fine. And then it'll be fine. It's like it's like the episode of SpongeBob where it's like you make fun of me because I can't survive in the water. Now you survive on land, and so then all of like the aquatic characters like go on land and they have like little puppets.
That's kind of funny.
So it's like, come on, Squidward, the air's fine up here.
Is a Muppet.
So yes,
but
make him a big nose.
I still want to say that, like you said, things like theaters will kind of become the predominant form of premiere screenings once COVID goes away, just because I want to say that you're more likely to make your money back and then some on that, as opposed to just one streaming service paying like $1 million or so bucks for, not $1 million, but a lot of money for it up front. But yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I just thought that was a cool little update that was worth mentioning since the last one.
Yeah, just keep up with it.
Yeah.
So,
and then I guess
see it through to the end.
Moving on from that, the other thing, the opposite end of the totem pole we have here are the streaming services, which I guess the big ones at this point are like, first of all, HBO Max, which has been responsible for a lot of the big talk when it comes to streaming services as of late. As of yesterday, April 9th, HBO Max, the app, actually became one of the 10 most downloaded apps worldwide, according to like a Variety survey.
Oh, wow.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
And that and the fact that more projects for HBO Max are being picked up more than ever now. Like even going as far as like individual shows. I think one of them was something like a magic reality show with chanting Michael Tatum. But yeah, stuff like that just kind of shows that like I think the HBO Max gamble is like slowly but surely paying off. Like the huge turnout and the huge spike is obviously thanks to stuff like The Subject Today and Kong vs. Godzilla. But it is kind of interesting to see something play out from conception when it comes to something like HBO Max, which was made to profit off of COVID while the production company was, which is to say Warner Brothers, was recovering from COVID. It's cool to see that pay off when they were like just kind of talking about it at first. So I guess, do you have any immediate thoughts before we kind of get into like what the future is looking like for HBO Max now that they're kind of gaining popularity?
I mean, I would agree with you because it's like when streaming services first start, Netflix is obviously and still is the front runner. Yeah, but then like it's been kind of interesting because like you're always kind of like there. I think there could be an actual debate like who's like at number 2 because like I feel like some people would say Hulu because they were always right behind Netflix. Some people might say Disney Plus because Disney owns all of the things. So, but I do think like HBO Max like genuinely can be like an actual candidate because. For one thing, they do have that one gigantic appeal of, don't go to the theater. Like, when it technically comes out in theaters, you get it automatically anywhere for free with your subscription at no extra cost.
A private screening, if you will.
Oh, he said the title of the movie.
Also, it's not like $30 extra charge, but whatever,
yeah, exactly, Disney. But, like, that's the point. And, like, I know they're not the best movies because with my track record of the ones that I've seen, like none of them I would really go out of my way to say are good. But like at least they're entertaining and like I would say you could make the argument that it is like worth your money.
Yeah, especially if you're into that sort of thing.
Oh, definitely, because like 2 of them were DC movies, and because it's Warner Brothers, they're obviously going to have a huge stake on like DC Comics and all that. So
literally forgot about
that's definitely a place you're going to want to go to. But I think the other thing that really gives HBO Max a leg up with the streaming services I've seen is that they actually have like a decent library. It's not like so like here's the main stuff we promote and then like here's a bunch of like other content you don't want to watch at all, which is like weird because like it's kind of the thing I got with Netflix. It's like when I find the one thing I'm very specifically looking for, it's like exactly what I want, but I don't have a super amount of variety. But then with HBO Max, it's kind of the flip where it's like, okay, here's a movie you wanted to watch, here's this one series you can't find anywhere else, and then here's a new movie to look forward to. But there's not like one that I would say really knocks it out of the park, aside from maybe some of the HBO stuff that they own, like Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Or
Yeah,
The
that's fair.
Soprano.
The Soprano.
Just the one.
Would you
A very
say?
good TV show.
I guess would you say that like of the new ones that we've seen that are from the actual studios, the top two would be I guess Disney Plus and HBO Max.
Yeah, I guess so. Out of the emergence, if I had to
top-
say, like, out of this whole explosion of more streaming services, who's on top, I would say is either Disney Plus or HBO. And I guess if you made me pick one, I'd go HBO, honestly.
Okay.
But that's just me. The problem, though, is I don't have Disney Plus, so I can't make a completely fair judgment.
Yeah, neither
So,
do I.
Take that with a grain of salt.
And,
So.
and you're definitely still in a better position to judge streaming services than I am because I don't use Hulu that much. I don't use Netflix that much. I don't have either Disney Plus or HBO Max.
Got it.
Yeah. I haven't gotten around that much. I guess
you're
you
good,
could
you're
say
good.
that. I don't know. I wasn't sure where I was going with that.
Well.
But yeah, I think HBO Max. Disney Plus has announced more stuff. HBO Max is releasing more stuff as of now, I want to say. Or is getting more publicity at the very least.
Yeah, that's true. Because there was that like whole Disney convention where it's like, okay, here's all the new projects we're making, and they're all going to be on Disney Plus.
We're gonna have
and it was like
10 Star Wars show, 10 Marvel
Yes.
shows. We're gonna have some Pixar shorts. It's gonna be everything.
Yeah,
And
so
that's
it's
crazy.
like it's like the calm before the storm because it's like
Oh yeah,
it's
there's
like
a
here's
hurricane
like
coming.
yeah, no, it's like when you look back at the old Marvel pictures of like when we were looking at like Phase 3 in like 2015. So it's like, okay, we're gonna get a Captain Marvel movie and like
Ooh.
a sequel to Guardians of the Galaxy, and then there will be 2 Avengers movies in 2 parts.
Yeah, it's definitely it's interesting too because they literally just dumped a whole bunch of 10 years worth of announcements. So that those are projects that are going to be coming out over the course of 10 years.
Yeah, we're not gonna like. We won't see the end of this till like 2025, 2026.
10
Maybe
seasons
later.
of private screening confirmed.
Uh-huh.
I guess yeah, Disney Plus and HBO Max are definitely the more prevalent. I guess we mentioned Paramount Plus previously. Nothing's really happened with them. Like they have data published on how many people are subscribing, but it's not nearly as much. They
Yeah,
have
they're
stuff like
still
Camp Coral
trying to
and
pick up steam.
yeah, news. But to be fair, I haven't heard much on the subject. They haven't done much advertising either. Looking at it, Paramount Plus comparatively seems to like just be an extension of pre-existing stuff instead of relying on exclusive stuff that would have been somewhere else if not for COVID.
Yeah,
So
that's fair.
it looks like they're consolidating all the SpongeBob onto there. You know,
It's just
Peppa
kind of
Pig
more of like a
stands-
backup.
Yeah,
kind of main.
Basically, it's more of a back. Yeah, like you said, it's more of a backup than it is an actual space for more new content that you're hyped for. Unless you're a Peppa Pig
Right.
stan,
Oh,
like
that's a lot of
myself,
people,
I
so.
guess. We got that new Peppa Pig content coming out, so. But yeah,
yes.
I guess
Oh,
just
yes.
looking down at it, we can kind of briefly go over the future of, or like the upcoming projects for HBO Max, like the big blockbuster ones, because we have like some smaller stuff too. But I guess we
yeah,
can.
that's true. That's true.
I guess we can focus on the big stuff now before we move on, since that's stuff more people are going to recognize.
Yeah, that's fair.
The first two we've already have for reference we already have World War 84 / Wonder Woman.
That was the first one.
We already have Tom and Jerry.
Yeah.
We already have. I'll count Judas and the Black Messiah. It's not made in the same vein as the other ones, but it was still hyped up.
I guess so.
And it was nominated for Best Picture for this year's.
Yeah,
for
like,
last year
that's
somehow.
like- That's like the one genuinely good movie. That's like the HBO exclusive streaming
and then,
deal at the same time. So
Fair. And then we have Kong vs. Godzilla was just released. Okay, so with those out of the way, am I missing anything?
aside from this film's subject, the only 2 that are springing to my mind right now, in 2 weeks we got the Mortal Kombat movie.
Yeah, that's where I was going to start. The new Mortal Kombat reboot, it's coming out in April. So this year, later this month.
Yeah,
I
April
don't know
23rd.
why I said this year, but excuse me.
Yes, and I'm gonna watch it, and I have like hardly any connection to the series.
Okay,
so.
neither do I. So the only Mortal Kombat thing piece of media that I've interacted with is literally the original movie. I know there are two.
Oh, really?
Of them. Yeah.
Yeah, because there was the 2 movies by Paul W.S. Anderson.
AKA,
I haven't seen either of them.
AKA the Monster Hunter guy, so Grant's in for a treat.
I mean, I actually looked at his filmography, and like pretty much everything he's made is like a video game movie, because he did like every Resident Evil movie.
Oh, he did?
Which I don't know why. Yeah, he did.
Nice.
That was all him. He did the Monster Hunter movie. He did both he did the first one. I'm not sure if he did the second one. So, and now he's not doing this new Mortal Kombat.
Which is why it looks better. From a visual standpoint.
True.
Like
the
scene to scene flow of the action, and I get it's a trailer, but it looks pretty good. It's also a lot more violent by the looks of things too, but
oh yeah, it's got that R rating, so
yeah, I literally have no connection to like the Mortal Kombat series. I've heard it's great, but I haven't played a single game, so I'm just hoping it's good.
I played 11. I got the MK11 and like the DLC characters, because it's weird because those games are run by NetherRealm, and they have like a weird thing with DLC characters where it's like, okay, instead of giving like more characters that like fit in the series, let's just have like these random one-off characters that are like actual like guests. Mm-hmm. So like that's why they have like some of the most hype DLC characters outside of Smash, because it's like, okay, you can now play as RoboCop.
Oh,
for real. So yeah, it's like
not clickbait.
RoboCop, the Terminator, Rambo. Like they just have a bunch of third-party characters along with like more MK characters. And they also do that with the Injustice games too. Like you could play as the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Hellboy in Injustice.
Oh.
So I'm like, all right. Let's go off.
Good stuff. I guess.
And then that leaves one other project.
Yeah.
Sam.
The one interesting thing. One interesting thing about the Mortal Kombat series, I guess, is that aren't they supposed to be like all 11 or so of those games? Aren't they supposed to be, even the movies too, one continuous timeline that just work in sync?
Oh, no. Okay. Because even though I've only played 11, I have like a very, very, very vague idea of Mortal Kombat. But it's weird because it's like, okay, 1 to 4 is like one timeline. But then somewhere around like the 2000s, they're like, okay, reboot. 5 to 8, those are like their own timeline. And then when NetherRealm got their hands on the series in 09, they're like, okay, reboot again. Everything gets reset. And then they made 9, they made 10, they made 11. But then the ending of 11 is like, okay, we're going to reboot again. And so it's like arguably one of the messiest like game lores out there. Because you got like Metal Gear and Zelda. Like they have crazy lore. I mean, MK isn't on their level, but it's kind of messy compared to what you would get out of like a normal game franchise.
I'm more of an Angry Birds lore guy myself.
I'm more of a Devil May Cry man, personally speaking. So
I'm very attentive to the Last of Us lore, and I think it's very intricate.
Says the man that only got to Joel's death and didn't play any further.
Yeah, I know everything about The Last of Us now.
Yes. And oh yeah, that's a little thing we can bring up. Apparently Sony, it's not official, but people said that they're going to be remaking that game. And yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, okay. I'm kind of frustrated with how like Sony handles like remakes and remasters, because it's like when the PS5 came out, it's like, okay, one of the launch titles is Spider-Man Miles Morales, but if you buy this one copy, you get an updated version of Spider-Man, but it's called Spider-Man Remastered. And the game came out. It came out 2 years ago, so how do you justify calling it a remastered? If it was like enhanced edition, I'd be perfectly fine, but Sony's concept of like, this is a remake, this is a remaster, is just like really on a different plane of existence. And it's worse too, because like Sony has a lot of good IPs that like they could do a remake on, like Jack and Daxter, Sly Cooper, Resistance, Gravity Rush.
Moment of silence for Sly Cooper.
Oh, they put him in the cliffhanger, and we didn't get anything out of it. I sunk so many hours in the 4th game, and then I figured out a lot of people don't like it.
I choose to believe that it continues in Guardians of the Galaxy.
It's like a crossover. Another one. So, but yeah, Sony's just
That is weird.
weird and everything with their games.
I don't know.
And their Spider-Man.
I guess moving on from video games and Mortal Kombat, the next big release will be in June, which I don't think either of us care about this one, but it's a little something. It's like the next Conjuring movie. And I think the title is like something like The Devil Made Me. It's not the devil. It's not something dumb like The Devil Made Me Do It, but it's something pretty close. It's something along the lines of something with devil in the title. It's a new Conjuring thing.
Gotcha.
So just like a matter of them expanding the universe via HBO Max. Moving on from that, I guess, do you have anything to say about that or no?
I don't. I'm not a horror movie guy, and I haven't been keeping up with any of the Conjuring movies, or honestly any horror movies, so I don't really have an opinion on that. Yeah.
All right. Well, then we'll just skip through these until we get to the next big thing. There's a little indie thing that comes out in July on HBO Max. It's called like, I don't know, Space Jam 2: A New Legacy.
Yes.
I don't know about that one, but it's coming out in July.
I know about that one. I read up about that one. I know what I want to say about that one. Yeah, I mean, this is going to be a little tangent, but
go ahead. That's why we do this.
I mean, because here's the thing. I watched Space Jam like one time in a full sitting as a kid once, and then saw like vague clips of it every now and then. But I honestly have no connections to the original. Like, I'm fine with it. I don't think as a movie it's particularly good, but it's a fun experience in the kind of like dumb fun sense of the term. So I'm not entirely sure why you would want to do a remake other than a sequel other than money, but
especially when it was it a big success? I think it made 200 million overall.
I mean, and for 90s, I think, isn't that kind of decent? Maybe.
Okay. For a Nike's commercial movie, I guess it did.
Oh, definitely. But it's kind of weird because like the original movie's just conflicts. Like, okay, aliens want to take over Looney Tune world. Looney Tunes say play basketball. Aliens are like, okay, but we get NBA player like physique. So then Looney Tunes are like, okay, we get Michael Jordan, and then they play a basketball game. This one is much weirder because what I'm getting off the trailer is like, okay, LeBron James, his son, wants to design video games, not play basketball. They have a conflict.
Oh, his thing is he wants to design video games?
I think because like
okay,
I think like I'm not sure if we read it on the last episode, but I saw a synopsis that said. I think something with like video game design. Point is that his son doesn't want to like grow up in LeBron's footsteps and play basketball.
Yeah, I got that much.
So then he goes to the server room. I don't know how because the trailer didn't
which is
explain
just
it.
there, giant pixelated ball.
They go into the internet, as I understand it. Don Cheadle's there, and he's like, "Okay, we got to play basketball because I have your son, and I'm not going to give him back." So, and then. Apparently, he's like, okay, your punishment is you have to go to the Looney Tunes dimension out of all the Warner Brother dimensions.
Weren't they underground, though?
No, they weren't underground because, like, again, in the original, it was that whole weird thing where it's like, okay, we have the portal underneath the golf course. But then in this one, it's just like, it's basically, they called it, like, the serververse. I think that's what the trailer says. But it's like, okay, here's, like, every single property that Warner Brothers owns. And, like, you can look at posts that are like, here are all the Easter eggs you can find in this one scene. And, like, it's like, here's The Wizard of Oz. Here's Game of Thrones. And then, like, they mention The Matrix. And I guess I can explain that later. But it's kind of weird because as I'm looking at this movie, the big impression I get from it is, like, this is going to be Space Jam meets Ready Player One. In the sense that here's like it's just a flex of here's like every single property that Warner Brothers has their hands on, because it's like you see posts where it's like, okay, if you look in the background you can see The Mask, and I'm like, we haven't gotten anything from The Mask since like 2006, so it's just a reference. Why should I care about that?
Yeah, I think I forgot which one of us said it, but like I know one person said that like it looked like that. And seeing the trailer, my fears really hit home because it seriously just looked like that one part from Wreck-It Ralph 2, but elongated into an entire film. And
I
like
wouldn't say
now
an
that you've
entire film.
mentioned,
I'd say like a
Ralph
whole
2?
act. That's my guess. Like the third,
Maybe.
because like, as I understand it, it's going to be like the first act's conflict, and then the first act ends with like LeBron meeting the Looney Tunes.
Oh, okay. And
The
you know what
second act is they train, and then the third act is the gigantic references. That's my prediction.
There was no
but-
real training montage in the first movie, though, was there? They kind of just like skipped the game.
I wouldn't say yes and no. There wasn't like an explicit one where it's like, okay, Michael Jordan gives all the Looney Tunes a bunch of basketball drills, but like there's that whole scene where it's like, okay, we're at the gym, and then it gets horrifying because then like the opposing team's like, haha, we're better than you, and then they do CGI Michael Jordan basketball that I can't get out of my head. I try so hard, and I just see it, and it's glossed over.
The glazed
doesn't
over
look
eyes
good.
just pierce your soul.
Exactly. Yes.
The Monstars are better than the Goon Squad, though. We can
Yes.
agree.
Okay. I'm gonna say this: Monstars are definitely better. Don't get me wrong on
Even
that.
the villain basketball players in this movie are just like references.
Sort of, because it's like, well, here's the thing. Even like in the original movie, they didn't have, because like the draw with this new movie is that it's like, okay, the whole team, like every single like basketball player has like a superpower. So like there's like the Human Torch, and then there's like a guy made of water, and then there's like a spider one, and then there's one that's just like straight up Golden Experience from JoJo, and I'm like, huh? Why is he dribbling the ball fast? But then, because it's just kind of interesting, because it's like they're trying something, but I think ultimately it's gonna play out as really generic and just not have much impact, aside from like one quick gag that like wasn't worth it. Because like it works in the original, because it's like, okay, I mean, it's not perfect obviously, but it's like it's believable enough to make it work within the quality of this movie. Where it's like, okay, they're like super threatening like mutant versions of NBA players. I'm like, okay, that's believable. You could do more, but I think you do a fine enough job establishing your foundation. But now it's like with the new players, I just don't think they're gonna have that exact same level, because they're gonna like rely more on the whole, oh, look at my power.
Yeah.
So.
And you know, now that you've mentioned the Suns thing with coding, I think how this is going to play out now that you've said that is he's going to end up saving them using his epic coding skills and prove himself to his dad or something.
I guess, or maybe he's gonna like learn to be like accepting of like, oh, even though I don't want to follow in your footsteps, like that's still a part of me and my history with my family. I guess.
That's my prediction.
Well, the thing that is in the trailer, it's like it's weird because they're gonna add like this element where there's like power-ups in the game, I think, because like
Really?
if you watch the like last 40 seconds when like they're showing off the like final basketball game, it's weird because it's like, okay, here's like a trampoline on the floor, and you can like just like spring into the air into a slam dunk. So I mean they're obviously wanting to do new stuff and not just like rehash the original, but
I don't know.
I don't think it's gonna pan out for a good movie.
I don't think the first Space Jam is good. In fact, I kind of don't like it at all and kind of wish I didn't watch it.
Oh,
But
really?
it left an impression. Like, the first Space Jam had personality.
That's one way of putting it.
A New Legacy... A
It's
New
a cash
Legacy's title kind of speaks for itself in that it is extremely, like, Hollywood rebootish in a way that the first movie very obviously was not, and I don't like that personally, because any, like, semblance of identity has now just kind of been stripped away for the sake of, like, parading Warner Brothers property for no reason.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a cash grab / like flex on what they own, which is a
it doesn't
shame
even,
because
like,
it's
feel
like
like a Looney Tunes thing.
because it's like such a shame because like it makes me realize it's like there's like so many like movies out there that it's like, look at the Iron Giant, and like I've never seen that movie, so I'm like I'm probably
Iron
gonna watch it
Giant
out of
wasn't Ready Player
spite, but I mean that's definitely a movie I want to like look into. So
Yeah, we'll see. I don't have high hopes.
I mean,
guess-
I'm looking forward to it in like an ironic sense that I'm like, I'm just gonna make fun of it, kind of like
I
Tom
don't
and
even know
Jerry.
if I'll be able to make fun of it, though. It just looks boring.
I mean, we'll see.
We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. July. That's the only big
Yeah.
July release. So
But yeah, that's for July. August, we'll see the release of The Suicide Squad, directed by James Gunn.
Oh.
We saw a trailer for that recently. It features a shark that looks like it's just going to be Groot, but in the best possible way.
Yes.
I guess it looks better?
Yeah. I mean, but, well, anything's better than 2016 Suicide Squad. Like, anything.
The bar is literally the floor.
Exactly. So, but even with that said, like, I think it looks decent because with everything I've had with James Gunn so far, like, I've constantly been pleased with his results. I really enjoy both Guardians of the Galaxy movies. He made a really funny superhero movie called Super, which is like a kind of funny, I'm trying to figure out how to describe it, but like it's much more like grounded and gritty because it's like Dwight from The Office loses his girlfriend and then like he gets a subliminal message from the TV that's like, you have to be the superhero and save the day. And then like he literally just like makes his own suit out of like spandex.
Yeah,
and, like,
I saw like a trailer.
He has like a wrench.
Yeah,
and
he goes
it.
out, but he has like none of the personality traits. He's just like deranged and doesn't know what he's doing and just hurts people.
I wouldn't say deranged, but like very misguided. So, and I mean, I think it panned out really well, and I found it to be a very enjoyable movie. So, very solid experience.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen a bad James Gunn thing. I've only seen the Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I think, but I don't think I've seen a bad James Gunn thing yet.
He also did the live-action Scooby-Doo, though, so that might change it.
Oh, okay. So. Yeah, that was bad. That was really bad.
Okay. Though that was early James Gunn, so who knows?
Yeah, we'll see. We shall see. I guess we can only wait until we have more information on that. Beyond that, all we have left for HBO Max is Dune in October, which is by my guy Dennis. And then The Matrix 4 releasing in December. And that's it.
Yeah, that sounds about right. For now.
That will see us through to the end of 2021. And then I guess for comparison's sake, Disney Plus isn't doing that thing where like they release every other month or so. They're kind of focusing on shows right now. Obviously, we have, I guess neither of us have Disney Plus to comment on it, but WandaVision, Falcon and the Winter Soldier came out recently, and people seem to like that. Loki's coming up, and it has Owen Wilson, aka Reggie from Freebirds, in it, so that's worth a celebration. And then their other individual projects, obviously we had Raya and the Last Dragon come out. We had Soul come out, which I actually did see by mooching off of someone else's Disney account. And then we also have Black Widow, obviously, coming out on Disney Plus now.
Well, then, I think that also might be coming in theaters, too.
Yeah, it's doing that simultaneous thing that Disney loves to do with their stuff. And then that new Pixar movie, Luca, which is coming out in theaters, too.
That looks decent. I mean, I'd like a little more detail, but I think first impressions are fine.
Looks kind of like a better Brave, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Even though Brave is like one of the worst Pixar movies.
Yeah, I think it's the worst, but that's a conversation for another day.
That's another episode.
I guess the one thing I kind of wanted to talk about was, like you said before, the Disney Plus premium charge thing that they do that nobody likes, where they charge $30 on top of a subscription just so you can see the newest thing. This happened with the 2019 version of Mulan. They did it again with Raya. And I just don't like that, because I think if you paid for a subscription, you should get the thing that you paid for, that you paid membership for.
I think that's totally fair, honestly.
I understand why. It's for money. But
because I think from like a business standpoint, it only benefits you because like look at HBO Max. I think that's kind of a big reason why people like it, because you get like new air quotes must see content like on your demand at no extra cost. So to have like your active competition do exactly what you're doing but better doesn't really give you an excuse, because like because like Disney has such a draw that it's like it would be like pretty much printing money if it's like, okay, when we release a new thing, you get it immediately.
I'm sorry,
but
I just thought of It's like printing my own money from Toy Story 2.
Yes. Big Al and Al's Toy Barn.
Can't believe I have to drive all the way to work on Saturday. But yeah,
Goes
sorry.
across the street. He crosses the street as a chicken. But
Chicken.
but like, oh no, not yet, not yet, no.
Okay, sorry.
But I mean, even if you want to do the whole like, let's charge you money, I think $30 is like way too much. Cause like, and it's not like you get to own it. It's like you just get the access
You just
to
get
watch
like
it.
to watch it once. Yeah, I don't.
Yeah, cause like
Maybe not once, but like it's
like
not
you get air quotes access to it until like they move on. But
yeah, it's stupid too, because if you wait a week, you could just watch it for free once they stop charging $30 for it.
exactly. So, and I think the only like, even if you want to do the whole like get it early, like make it like $2. Like if you insist on charging money, $30 is just way too much. Cause like you can literally buy 2 movies on Apple TV and keep them permanently with $30.
Yeah.
And those are like premium movies. Like you can even find like sale movies on stuff. Like I remember I got Hot Fuzz for like $8 and it was like such a deal. So, I mean,
I guess
I don't like that.
I guess the silver lining to this all, looking at it on the whole, now is kind of that it's an experiment, and the reception seems to be negative. So I hope this encourages them to stop, because the most recent example of this to happen was with Raya and the Last Dragon, which got the $30 upon initial release treatment. And it released simultaneously in theaters and Disney Plus, and I think they were really banking on the $30 on Disney Plus bringing it in, but it actually opened, this movie Raya, it actually opened below expectations on the opening weekend when that $30 charge was a thing, and only ended up scraping about 8.6 million, which isn't bad by COVID standards at all. But then cross-reference that to Tom and Jerry's reign, which got it 14 million, so like 39% less. And you kind of just realize that Disney got shown up by the Babu frickin' Tom and Jerry movie because they charged $30 for something when they shouldn't have. So I guess it's. I hope this disencourages it. I think we still have ways to go, but it's kind of nice to see that not paying off in a weird, borderline cynical way, I guess. But still.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a shame though, because is Disney ever gonna learn? Because we've gotten to this point where Disney doesn't really need to put in the effort.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I mean, it's like, it's the reason I don't like Wreck-It Ralph 2 is because like it's just kind of a monument to like look at like how we don't have to like try anymore, because like
that's what Space Jam 2 is gonna be.
Yeah, well, I mean, yes and no. Like it's gonna pull the same stuff, but I think it's gonna have like a different message or like meaning with Space Jam 2. With Disney, it's just kind of like, okay, like remember all this stuff from like the 90s that you grew up with? Well, now we're going to like strategically like prey on that nostalgia. And so, and you aren't going to be able to like, and like the people, they just don't think are like, okay, here's money. Do
they're
thing.
They're not even going to stop at the 90s. They're taking it like 3 steps too far and going to the 40s where Bambi lives peacefully.
No. And I think it's even getting kind of worse because like, with their modern stuff that obviously isn't as good but has like some line of quality, even that stuff I feel like is also kind of getting that treatment, because like when Frozen came out and everyone's like, oh, Frozen so good, like I feel like even that's kind of becoming like a part of the system, because it's
and
like
maybe Raya is better and like kind of does something to change that,
maybe,
but for the most
I think
part
time
I would
will
mostly
tell.
agree with you.
So
yeah, I guess so. Looking at it that way, I appreciate the $30 experiment not paying off for Raya and The Last Dragon, because to me it kind of seems like the public putting their foot down saying, no. We're not going to pay $30 for this, and we're not okay with that. And I like that.
yeah, but
Why
like,
do you... Sorry.
I mean, I was just gonna say that like it's a concerning sign when stuff like The Lion King and Aladdin remake are some of the most highest grossing films in recent memory. Like that's kind of the concerning sign for me. But
They're listed as the highest grossing animated movies sometimes too.
I I mean, I know that with The Lion King, it's like, oh, they try to push it as live action, but it's animated. It's not live
animated.
action.
Anyone who says live action, like,
No,
I guess
ding dong,
hasn't
opinion
been
wrong.
outside. I don't know. Why do you think they did the $30 thing for Raya, but not Soul or Luca?
Luca isn't out yet. I don't know why with Soul.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, my thought process was, I think the reason the $30 didn't pan off is because it was a new idea and was like a brand new thing. But then I feel like the thing that would juxtapose it would be the Mulan remake, because that was the very first one that did the whole $30 deal. But I'm not sure how that turned out. I don't think it really pulled a lot off, but I definitely, I want to see like this kind of, I want to see a couple more of these. I want to see like historically if like they aren't succeeding, so then Disney has to go, okay, maybe we should lower the price, maybe we just should drop this entirely. So
yeah,
just time will tell.
Yeah. So those are the big things. I guess the only other big thing they have coming up is Luca and Black Widow that I've heard of. Obviously some shows in there, but
right.
I couldn't be bothered to look into all of them. That Disney Expo thing was just too big. Yeah, so that, HBO Max, Paramount Plus, I don't think we need to talk about Peacock at all because they've kind of stopped advertising.
Well, they got WrestleMania tonight. So
I guess, yeah, I don't know. The final question before we move on to the next subject is, what do you think of, personally or objectively, like what do you think of this trend of, I guess, production studios like Warner Brothers and Disney jumping onto the streaming service bandwagon like we mentioned earlier? Like, do you think this is a method of consolidating costs until theaters can come back, or do you think this is something that's going to stay?
Like in regards to the whole like HBO Max releasing a movie and also on the streaming service on the same day?
Mm-hmm. Because now, like, I think we're seeing more of that.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. Personally speaking, what I want to say is let's let theaters kind of get back going and then let's see what happens. Because, like, as I'm seeing it, it could pan out in a lot of ways. Like, maybe they keep this going and they figure out, like, which draws more. So it's like, oh, more people are doing the streaming service, so obviously this could be a big draw and let's keep it. Or maybe, like, if theaters open up, it's like, okay, like, hardly anyone saw us on streaming services, so, like, let's cancel this idea now that, like, we have more people going to theaters now. So, if I had to make a prediction, I think it would be interesting to see if they would keep this going, like, post-COVID years, but all I can really say is let's just see how it plays out. Again, time will tell. So
yeah, I guess I agree, but you know what? I don't know. I want to say, because I don't know if, like, I'm still not convinced that HBO Max and Disney Plus are going to be things that persist to the extent that they are now once COVID goes away, because then theaters will just be back and things will go back with the theaters, right? Maybe I'm missing something. I obviously don't have a degree in, like, business practice or anything, but with theaters being, like, such a traditional and reliable form of profit with these, as opposed to, like, one subscription, I want to say that, like, theaters will still reap in the bigger profit. Yeah.
Because I think that is another interesting element, is, like, how are streaming services going to adapt, like, after COVID? Because you do bring up a good point where it's like one of HBO's like big draws that has definitely gained it popularity is the whole movie theater thing that we've been talking about. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, post-COVID, are they still going to have that like leading edge, or is that going to like fizzle out? So then they just kind of like sit in the back burner and be like, okay, so we have some content, but we're just kind of on the side. So,
yeah, it would be interesting to see the tables turn like that and have streaming services try and catch up to theaters. Or maybe that won't happen, but still.
Yeah, again, time will tell, so. But it do be interesting.
The sticky twilight of man. So, you want to know what else is the sticky twilight of man?
What's that?
Well, if you really are interested in knowing, I think The Twilight of Man can best be summarized by the Netflix Spider-Man Sony deal, which you may or may not have heard of. Tell me, Grant, what do you know of this? You have heard of this?
Sort of. So, as I understand it right now, I know Sony and Netflix like struck a deal, and they said something like up until 2022, anything with like Spider-Man or Sony gets exclusive streaming rights to Netflix.
Okay. I'm just looking at the market activity reports. This deal was made on the 8th, so this Thursday, April 8th. Netflix executives signed a multi-year agreement for, I guess, domestic streaming rights, like you said, to Sony Pictures Entertainment's theatrical movies. So that includes the upcoming Spider-Man films. This deal is slated to actually begin with the 2022 releases, going past that into whatever comes next, I guess.
Got it. So it's kind of like Netflix's answer to HBO Max, but with Sony.
Yeah, so I guess this kind of reinforces the idea that production companies are striking more deals with streaming services almost. Like this and Knives Out kind of tell me that. And I'm not sure. I don't know. It's kind of interesting for this to happen now instead of earlier, since we are arguably, I'm not saying we are, but things with COVID are arguably looking more manageable with the vaccines than they have been before. I don't think we're out of the woods yet, but not even close. But I don't know. It's interesting that this should happen now of all times, especially since 2022 is not that far away. But it's just interesting that this happened now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it could be another like we're just like sowing the seeds, and so we'll just see how that plays out. That's the thing. Like, that's just all I'm gonna like keep reiterating. Time will tell, but because like who knows? Because it's like the movies that they have, like the only ones I know out of the gate are the third Spider-Man, and then they got an Uncharted movie that they're making.
I think they're doing the Spider-Verse sequel too, right?
Right. So, yeah. And then Morbius didn't come out, so I feel like that could be on the list as well.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
So
Venom 2.
Come again?
Venom 2.
Oh yes. I'm so happy for that one. They gotta get Eminem though. If they don't get Eminem, then
if
there's
like,
no Eminem, it's bad.
0 if it's Eminem lacking.
No, not a 0. 1.25. Because like Eminem makes it easily. Eminem automatically makes it a 4, and then the comedy in that movie makes it automatically a 5 out of 5. So.
Okay. I thought you were saying like 1.25 stands for the caliber of your blood once you hear the Eminem song.
No, it's like, oh, I'm not going to work out today. And then I hear Venom by Eminem, and I go to the gym.
Rips off shirt, Superman style.
No, takes off suit, leaves class.
Yeah.
So. But, I mean,
I guess.
So.
Do you have anything else to say on that? On the subject of this before we transition into our next superhero topic?
I mean, I don't really have anything too substantial. Again, just let's see how it plays out. But
I just thought it was worth mentioning. Yeah, just
that's fair. That's fair.
Bring it up now. We might go into it later once more stuff happens and we get more announcements from the actual executives on which movies they're going to have. Time will tell. Again, this is a time capsule thing that we just kind of talk about and look at in retrospect. So, we will see. Now, on to the next chapter, which is superhero movie culture.
Oh, is that what that was? I couldn't read the title. So
this is a big one. Yeah, I know.
I mean, it do be. So
it do be like that.
It's gotta be.
This is a monster topic that I kind of deemed relevant because it really puts into context where we're going with today's big subject.
Yeah, because I mean, I guess in a way you could kind of say that like the movie of this episode. Obviously, you can read the title to see what it is. But
I wonder what it is.
It's kind of like it's like the last big like stepping stone where we are with like superhero movies and all that. So
I think it's a culmination of like all the developments, both in the culture and in like context of the production companies behind them.
At least so far, like it's the most up to date. Because like it's not going to end here, or maybe it is, but
but
the point is
that
like this is kind of like the conclusive point as of right now.
Yeah, it's the fact that this is like the piece of entertainment media that people identify to that we're talking about is kind of amazing to me, because the idea of people flying around in capes is the most like 1960s thing I've ever heard in my life.
That's
and
why they made
yet,
comics.
despite the fact that it seems so out of date, we still have stuff like this being modernized and formatted to appeal to everyone today, which is honestly kind of amazing. I think it goes to show how like many different things you can do, even if more often than not you kind of end up experiencing arguably the same thing more often than not.
Yeah, for the most part. So yeah,
I guess we'll just kind
of like discuss
mapping out the history in order to put it into context. Superheroes obviously were not literature. Maybe literature. You could say literature. They came from comic books.
I don't know.
So it was a comic book thing first, visual medium second.
Fair.
So this was like kind of something you would see in the. It started with like serial novels in the 30s and 40s, but superheroes found their origins kind of mainly during the war effort, I want to say. Superheroes were usually utilized during the war efforts, like World War II, to kind of promote a certain political ideology.
Mama, was ist los? What's this, a dark horse?
Maybe
fair.
provide entertainment, or just be comic books that you could buy at the dollar store for 50 cents. One of the two big examples of this are Captain America from Marvel, which was literally made to help out with the war effort against the Nazis. Then with Superman, you kind of have a similar thing with
Truth,
just like
Justice, and the American
stories
Way,
about nuclear
stuff like that.
arms. Yeah. So that's really where we see them at first. And even then, we kind of have this, it's hand in hand for now. The emphasis is equal. But if anything, it's more in favor of comic books. But we still have like this relationship between comic book inspiration and then superheroes. And people obviously identified with these superheroes and kind of liked them. And we're talking about like, I guess we're starting with American stuff, by the way, to start.
Fair.
But people obviously liked them and identified with them. I think it's fair to say that, because they were a huge success, and they basically single-handedly propelled themselves into today with that. I think comics have always been around and they've always been a thing, but I think the transition into the mainstream that kind of made superhero movies the go-to thing when you talk about superhero stuff happened in the 80s. And obviously I'm not saying that like if you prefer the comic books over the movies that you're wrong. Just looking at it,
superhero movies versus comic books.
Yeah, focusing on how big of an influence the movies themselves have become, working off of comic books. That first step happened in the 80s, when both DC and Marvel had kind of done their own TV programs and stuff, and had established their own studios. So we had DC Comics, DC Entertainment, which made their own DC movies, which had more recognizable IP at the time, and then Marvel Studios, who made their smashing entrance into the world of cinema with Howard the Duck. We've come a long way.
Well,
so
actually,
I guess,
I think the history is kind of interesting because, as I understand it, sorry if I interrupted, my bad.
It's good.
But I guess the way I'm understanding movies, to kind of just give like a general overview, just for like context. Don't quote me, but the first big superhero movie I can think of was the original Superman movie, because wasn't that like in the 70s or something?
It was the first one was released in 1978. Yep,
okay.
It was.
Yeah. So I always kind of took it that was like the first one. So that was kind of the early years, and so you had stuff like Superman and Batman, those two.
Yeah.
that had like 4 movies that got progressively worse as they went along, but like the first entry is always really solid.
And
Marvel. Go ahead.
Batman especially is really kind of the Tim Burton's first one was really kind of the mood setter for this whole dynamic, because up to a certain point DC was just kind of making funny programs like the 60s Batman show those black and white serial Superman movies. And up to a certain point, since they didn't really have anywhere else to go with their new studio, they just decided to have Tim Burton like take Batman out for a spin and make a dark, gothic, political superhero movie with heavy advertising. And that was a huge success. And so then that became DC's business model, that kind of dark, gritty superhero thing. And Marvel actually decided to mimic that for a while, which explains the 1987 Punisher movie, and then also attempts at creating a Fantastic Four universe, and then later a 90s Captain America movie. So at first, from the looks of things, just looking at the track record and what it was like, it really kind of looks like a case of Marvel mimicking DC in regards to like ensuring financial success.
Right. Because like at first, like when it came to like the movies and stuff, it was kind of like DC was like trying some stuff out there, and like there's not a whole lot out there. They definitely have the
advantage.
Yeah, like up until the 90s, there honestly weren't that many superhero movies. Right. And then I guess in the 90s, that's like when they tried, but no one could kind of like figure out, okay, how are we going to make these work? Because you get the like Fantastic Four movies, those don't really hold up. You get the Blade movies, which like
Constantine.
Oh yeah, like
on DC's end.
Constantine was a little later though, so I wouldn't necessarily say it, but that's kind of a very late case. But it's kind of weird because like in the 90s, they were like, okay, we have superheroes, but how do we perfect it? Right. And I would say that no one necessarily figured out how to do that until Spider-Man. Because then 2002, Spider-Man by Sam Raimi came out, and I would say that was a generally beloved movie. I like it, not the biggest fan of it. I think it's like a 3 out of 5.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the first comic book movie that could say, okay, like this can actually be viable and you can make an actually good movie out of it. So and then obviously they finished the trilogy with 2, which got a lot of love, still 3 out of 5 for me. And then 3, I don't want to get into it.
We're not going to get into 3.
But that's another episode. No, that's another episode.
Unless you want to make this another hour.
No, please no. There's plenty of things. But so they did that, and then I don't really think DC did anything super big until Christopher Nolan came out, and then he started doing stuff like Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and then he made Dark Knight Rises with his trilogy. But then we didn't see anything super big. Like the next big thing after the Raimi trilogy and the Nolan's movie was the MCU with Iron Man. But it's interesting because it wasn't like, even though Iron Man at first was a very good movie and well received, it was just a thing that constantly grew. It was like, okay, how do we top the next movie? So, and the secret to their success was obviously how well they planned everything. Because it's like, okay, Iron Man movie, Hulk movie, Iron Man sequel, Captain America, Thor. Now we have 5 movies of all this buildup. Now let's bring it all together with the Avengers. And then after the Avengers, they're like, why stop there? Another Avengers movie, bringing the Guardians of the Galaxy, Ant-Man. And so obviously they kept building and then they introduced more characters, more players, more plot lines, more movies.
More payoff.
Exactly. And the payoff came with Infinity War and then Endgame, which is obviously why Endgame is the second highest grossing movie. Because Avatar did that sneaky trick with China and they re-released it so James Cameron can get the crown once more.
Yeah.
So. Well,
I think the part you mentioned about the 90s being the real turning point with like the influx of superhero movies is interesting because I want to say that happened because that was when we started getting a lot more blockbusters too.
Yeah, that's
Jaws obviously was the movie that created the blockbuster genre that broke everything. And so more people tried to recreate that kind of success using different genres, different tones, and different things that people would respond to, which in the 90s happened to include superhero movies, which in my opinion explains why we got so many things that you mentioned pre-Sam Raimi Spider-Man. And I also want to say, I want to go out on a limb and say that DC obviously had the advantage before Spider-Man, even when they were still making subpar, really, really bad stuff. because they still had the more recognizable IP that they did more with earlier that Marvel just didn't. Like, they had Howard the Duck, The Punisher, and nothing else. DC had previously done the Batman movies, the Superman movies, and people knew what those were, and they liked them so much they ate cereal with Batman every day, with like a Batman cereal box every day, that they just naturally gravitated towards that, I think.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that reigned true until Spider-Man came along and kind of got people paying attention to that, while DC still kind of tried to figure out what it was doing until Christopher Nolan came along and did his own thing. And obviously, there have been like things outside of DC and Marvel too that are worth going into. There are different interpretations of superhero movies that span beyond the blockbuster genre.
That's fair.
Grant obviously mentioned Super, which is a case of taking the superhero format and kind of putting it in our world, I guess. I haven't seen it, but it's more grounded and bound by logic. You can make it...
Because it's kind of more like just like a human take on the...
Yeah.
Like, there's no superpowers. But...
You have, like, The Incredibles. You have stuff like Megamind, which is basically a direct deconstruction of everything involving superhero stuff. You also even have TV series now, which I kind of think TV superhero things are neat, because they take like the episodic adventure-y feel of the early superhero stuff in the 40s and kind of update it into the 21st century. I kind of think that's fun in full circle.
Yeah, because
I think...
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I literally... Oh, wait, no, I didn't. So I think looking at all of that, it really speaks a lot to what people... how much you can do, especially corporations, how much they can do with something as simple as a superhero genre. And I think it also raises interesting questions to how people respond to that and how they identify with it too. Because without people really picking up on these and going to see them and bonding with each other over it, we wouldn't have things like, I guess, the MCU community or the Raimi community, if you want to call it that we see today.
Yeah, that's fair. But I think, like, it's the most important thing out of this was just how much of a game changer the MCU was. Because, like, as they were growing, because then, like, that's what spawned the whole everyone has to have, like, a connected cinematic universe now. Because, like, DC came out and it's like, okay, Man of Steel, we're doing this. And then Universal tried to do the Dark Universe, and it's like...
we got the Monsterverse recently.
Never mind. Yeah, the Monsterverse with Godzilla and Kong.
They tried the Dark Universe 3 times and failed every single time.
Did you actually know that Marvel, like, tried to do something kind of like that before the MCU? With, like... Because, like, there was, like, Punisher in Ghost Rider, because I think I watched this on a Red Letter Media video, but, they said that there was, like, this thing called, like, Marvel Knights or something, and, like, it had 3 movies, and it was, like, Punisher, Ghost Rider, and something else. But it was supposed to be, like, a more darker, edgier kind of, like, superhero movie back then.
In line with DC, because that's what was making money.
Right, and, like, it was kind of something that they were experimenting with that didn't really pay off.
Yeah.
But it is kind of interesting because, like, nowadays, like, you have, like, the different types of people. Because, like, first, there will be people that do like superhero movies and people that don't. But then you can't singly classify superhero movies as one particular thing. Because, like, you could have people that are like, oh, I'm a sucker for the old Christopher Reeve Superman. Or you could have someone that says, I'm a huge MCU fan. Or you could have people that say, like, I grew up with the Raimi trilogy, so that's, like, my favorite movie. And then you could have the worst group, the Zack Snyder fans. Don't get me started. I don't wanna. But I guess
there's time.
Should I give history about how we get to the grand finale of our main topic?
Maybe. I guess. Are you okay with going over a few things before we continue on to that, just to end out this discussion of?
Oh, yeah, sure. Just kind of summarize this part.
The development of it, I guess.
By all means.
Where do you think it's gonna go now? I guess with everything, because we still have MCU stuff, but I don't know if we're at the peak of this like kind of trend of superhero blockbusters, or like if we're still going. Maybe we haven't even hit the peak yet. Maybe it's gonna get bigger. or maybe if like we've since hit the peak and are just kind of spiraling down since Endgame has come and gone, and since the genre is kind of quieted down with COVID and all.
I would say. Go ahead.
I think there's always going to be a market. The superhero genre is certainly a testament to how much you can do in the one genre and how far it's come. But I don't think it's good. I think it's going to keep on changing. I don't think we're going to see a lot of similar stuff like we did in like the 2010s with the MCU and DCEU.
Gotcha. I would say right now this is kind of a critical point when it comes to like superhero stuff, because we're at like a breaking point. Because after Endgame and Far From Home, there wasn't really anything that we were looking forward to. So it's like we're taking a break.
Yeah.
And then that break only got furthered because of COVID.
Yep.
So I think like right now, like during this recording, this is like prime time setting the foundation for like future stuff and people's investment. Like WandaVision is a huge one. Because again, Marvel's still the front runner. So whatever Marvel's doing is really going to set the pace. So seeing
Marvel
how
is
stuff
still...
like these shows and Black Widow play out, I think that's really going to kind of set expectations and like excitement for future projects.
Is it fair to say that Marvel is still the front runner while DC is still figuring it out for themselves?
Absolutely, I would say. However, I do feel like maybe the Suicide Squad could be the turnaround and like maybe put them on the right track. But then again, I feel like I'm saying that with like every DC movie, because it's like, oh, okay, Wonder Woman showed a tiny sign of promise. Oh, Justice League ruined it. Aquaman was okay. Shazam was kind of good though. I like that one. But then Birds of Prey ruined that momentum. So, well, it's just
fingers crossed.
Yeah, because that's the thing. I remember another Red Letter Media comparison they said was like, Marvel has such a has a level of quality and consistency, but like DC at its peak could top Marvel, but the problem is that you have such inconsistency that you just don't know what you're gonna get.
It will definitely get into that with the coming subject, but
yeah. So now do I do the build up to this?
Yeah, I don't know. I guess my last question before we get on to the main events is, why do you think certain people gravitate towards specific communities and form them?
Like with different superhero movies?
Yeah. Just to round out the culture part.
To be honest, I think it all just kind of boils down to like personal taste and just who you are, and like when it comes to absorbing movies and stuff. Because like, I know like there are going to be people out there that love like the Raimi trilogy. Like I would
absolutely there
like,
are.
Yeah. They get a little too passionate though, and that's why I kind of am at odds with them. But it's like
everyone does.
Obviously, like you're gonna have movies that like you're gonna gravitate towards more. Like when I was first getting into movies, I was like definitely big on the MCU, and like both Guardians of the Galaxy films were like my number one favorite.
Right? Yeah.
So obviously, like everyone is gonna say like I gravitate towards this more. It does get a little bit problematic though, because you're gonna get butting heads, especially like a prime example, without even really needing to explain it. Raimi fans against the MCU Spider-Man.
Yeah,
that's a mess, because it's like, oh well, Raimi's movies have so much heart and soul, and they're like grounded, while the MCU is just soulless, and he's like Iron Man Jr. But that feels like such a generalization of those movies, without like actually legitimately making that kind of a claim with evidence to back it up. Because anyone can make a claim.
And that feels sort of inevitable too, with just, I think the fact that it's just become such a staple of mainstream culture in the 21st century, and has become the icon of like blockbuster image kind of helps with that, because with something that big, it only seems natural that we'd get a lot of people having different preferences and creating different fan groups and stuff out of that. And honestly, it's kind of amazing that it's still going on. Like, again, this has been going on since the early 1900s.
Yeah, and like it's really kind of started to pick up popularity in mainstream culture in 2008. So to see it hold on for over a decade is like really a testament of time.
And we bring that up because the dynamic between these studios and the people It all culminates into one giant movie that released recently that we're going to talk about. That movie is the big one.
Okay,
the
so
main event. The magnum opus. The one that would single-handedly end all of world hunger. If you didn't watch it, you're up for prosecution. The Snyder Cut. Justice is Gray, which is the worst title I think I've ever heard in a long time.
It do be not good. But now do I do the history? Because we finally got it. Okay.
You want to give the
Yeah,
context?
third time's a charm. Okay.
If you don't know, the Grant's going to explain it to you.
I'm about to go to the whiteboard and start speaking to you while the impact font captions start rolling in.
If you somehow have avoided the entire mess that was the history behind Zack Snyder's Justice League,
Hey, YMS did.
then here comes Grant.
Yeah, because this will work for like future people that like have moved on from all of this. So
Yeah.
But okay, so MCU was blowing up, and DC's like, crap, we got to catch up now because they obviously are doing something we're not. So they hired Zack Snyder and say, make our MCU but with DC characters. And he's like, okay, Man of Steel, pretty polarizing, honestly. I want to rewatch it because I actually remember when I was like 10, I saw it in theaters, but I don't remember a thing. So not important. They kept making other movies and they weren't really doing a good job. Like BVS and Suicide Squad both tanked hard. So they clearly were not succeeding, obviously. And they had a lot of underwhelming buildup, which inevitably resulted in is it 2017 or 2018? I think it's 2017.
For the first cut?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2017.
Yeah. So in 2017...
Can I interject? I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I thought of something. This is like the point of releasing Justice League after like 3 of those movies marks the first major problem of the DCEU, because this means that by doing this after like your 3 or 4 movies in, you're basically saying that the DCEU is not actually an EU or extended universe, because you have your Superman origin story, which is expected. Instead of doing a Batman origin story like you naturally would in the opening stages of your cinematic universe, you instead introduce him in a second Superman movie in a very tone-deaf way that makes no sense. And then instead of establishing the rest of the cast that will eventually be in this Avengers equivalent culmination, you just go ahead and do Suicide Squad, maybe a Wonder Woman, and then just jump right into the next one without any context.
Yeah.
Which just like... I don't know what they were expecting, because no one was ever going to really be interested in the Justice League movie in context of the DC cinematic universe, because they didn't do anything to make it feel like a cinematic universe.
Right, exactly.
The MCU was cool because people tuned in to these consistent characters and kept track of their story up until their get-together. When everything paid off. Like, that's why it was a cinematic universe in the first place, so you could kind of pull off that extended grand storytelling while still nailing all sorts of different feels and tones for the most part.
And that's exactly why Marvel succeeded where DC failed, because they actually did their planning. Because they had everything already planned out, and they knew how to get like people invested, so that's obviously why the payoffs were huge. With like DC and the Justice League, like, because here's the thing in context. You have 6 members in that movie. Half of them have had 0 screen time or build up until that movie. So obviously, it's not gonna, like, you have no development. So why should I care?
People aren't going to the movie because they care about those characters because of the universe, because they weren't in the universe before.
Right. But that's enough rambling there. So, okay. So the thing is that the original cut of Justice League was going to be Zack Snyder's 3rd movie after Man of Steel and BVS. However, due to, I believe his daughter died, unfortunately, during filming, so he had to step away from the project.
Tragic.
Yes. So he had to step away from the project, and Warner Brothers was like, okay, we have an unfinished Avengers-like movie. We got to figure out how to solve this. They looked out the window, and they saw Joss Whedon walking by and says, You made the Avengers. Here's half of our money. please finish this movie, and Joss Whedon agreed. So then he did some reshoots. He tried to salvage the film, and that resulted in the 2017 version of Justice League, which a lot of people like to call Justice League because that plays into everything.
Yeah, even though it really wasn't.
Yeah.
He wanted to make it like 2.5 hours long, but Warner Brothers made him cut it
That's
down
a whole other
to 2
story
hours.
you can look into. Because it's like,
it wasn't. People love blaming Joss Whedon for this, even though
we're getting ahead of ourselves.
His 100% vision, it wouldn't have been entirely like the way it was. This is like Warner Brothers version first and foremost. But yeah.
Yeah, and like we're getting ahead of ourselves.
Did it do well?
Well, it came out. It was pretty much critically panned like everything else and killed more momentum.
Yeah.
And that was the thing, because like it came out, no one really said anything out of the gate. And then we're just like, okay, that was a movie, let's move on. But then I believe like in 2018, I forget his name. Who is the Ray Fisher? That was the actor for Cyborg, right?
I believe you are right.
Okay.
I can actually look that up right now while you're talking.
Yeah. So Ray Fisher, I believe, he came out and was like, wait, this is like all wrong. Zack Snyder had a totally different version of the movie. Right. So like Ray Fisher was like, no, like there's a bunch of this drama. This is not what was supposed to happen. This is all wrong. And then like more and more like cast members were like, yeah, what he said. And so then, and like I think even Zack may or may not have gotten in on this during all of that. So essentially they were like, yeah, like this is all a farce. And so like, and that was happening throughout the years, like 2018 and 2019 and all that. And the cornerstone that summarized all of this, that started the movement, was the whole infamous hashtag release the Snyder Cut. Because everyone was like, the movie's there, you just aren't going to release it. So months and months go by and more release the Snyder Cut. Here's like a concept art that I had. Like here's another actress that says, yeah, release the Snyder Cut. COVID hit. And so then movies get halted, release the Snyder Cut still out there. The Snyder fan base, that's definitely kind of like when they really started to like come out and show themselves in true form. And so until eventually in like September or October, Warner Brothers is like, okay, we are in 2021 going to release the Snyder Cut. It's going to happen. We'll put it on our streaming service and you will be the first to watch it. So they make the official announcement. Gets hyped up for like half a year, because I remember like it was fall semester when I first heard that they actually were gonna like release it, and then they mark the calendars. March 18th, Snyder Cut gets released. General audiences actually really enjoyed it, and then they re-released it and they made a second version called Justice is Gray, which is the exact same version but in black and white, and then we're here today.
Yep. So I guess to get started, thank you, Grant, for the context.
Yes.
That was very good.
My pleasure.
I don't think you missed anything at all.
I hope not. Or there's going to be that one guy in the comments that's like, no, you missed this specific moment in 2016 and you are wrong.
Unless
this
it is
is what
really major,
you
we missed it.
are incorrect.
Okay, so I guess to get started, the actual adjustments that were made to justify a second cut. First thing, 2 more hours of content, he said, stifling a laugh.
Well, here's the thing.
This movie is 4 hours long.
Yes, and I think before we get into that general overview, I don't think that runtime is justified.
It is not.
Not in the slightest. So.
We will get into that later, but I guess we'll continue with the adjustments.
Should we do with like? Should we start with like kind of like what general impressions were and kind of like how we both went into it? Honestly.
I'm just gonna like mention the changes that were made, and then I'll be down for that.
Okay, fair enough.
So the other thing that they did besides making it 4 hours, I guess, is they gave it this ratio. Was it like 4
aspect
by 3?
ratio, 4:3. You even get a little message at the start of the movie that's like, this is a new aspect ratio, so we can uphold Zack's like artistic vision, which is, I'm shocked didn't turn into a meme, because that was like big meme status.
I know we're gonna turn it into it.
Oh, it's gonna be our one of the inside jokes.
Yes. I don't know if this is gonna happen, but it would be really funny if like when we edited this, our 4:3 aspect ratio just like covered up half of the thumbnail.
Half the screen.
And you couldn't see it.
Yes.
But anyway, there's the aspect ratio, which is very noticeable, and it's pretty much up in the air whether or not that jives with you or not. The other big thing, like Grant said, they released like a black and white version shortly after the original Snyder Cut.
Justice is gray
so
version.
everything is gray. I think this helped. I think this made my experience slightly better because by making it gray, it kind of felt more in sync with the tone they were going for. And it also made it so I couldn't notice the muted colors that I usually hate looking at in a Snyder movie.
Got it. Well, I actually disagree with you because here's the thing. You came over once and we both watched Justice is Gray.
I don't have HBO Max, so I watched it with this guy.
Right. But the thing was, I actually also watched the original like in color.
Yep.
So I have like the ultimate experience because I'm the truest Snyder fan. But personally speaking, I actually liked the color version more because well, for one thing, it really kind of made a lot of the special effects did not look good in black and white compared to the original in color version, because stuff like Superman's like eye beams and like the Flash running, it looked too bright, and like having those like bright whites really pierce through the image and like be kind of distracting didn't help. And then I guess I feel like that aside though, it really is going to boil down to personal preference. So like special effects difference aside, I honestly could say it just kind of boils down to whatever I'm in the mood for.
Yeah,
but since I think the special effects are more distracting, I would probably lean a little bit more towards like the color version. But then again, that's not to say like, oh, like the Justice is Gray version is much worse.
It just has the worst title.
And still has the same bad content.
All right, well, I guess you can go first. What was your viewpoint or experience going in and then watching it?
Okay,
So on all fronts.
So my story with this was like, when it first got announced, I'm like, okay, great, the Snyder Cut. Who cares? Like, I know that the Snyder fans are gonna be like, nah, I was right. So I'm like, what's the point? But then like as we got closer, I'm like, well, I don't know, maybe this could be fun to just like see maybe if Snyder like turns it around and makes an actually good movie. But what really turned it for me was like the initial response from the public, because like this came out on a Thursday.
Yep.
So, and like people were like, oh, this is a good movie, like Zack like finally got his true vision, and like everyone was talking about that. But like I noticed they weren't being super specific, they felt kind of vague. But like I was kind of like turned around and like, okay, I'm expecting like a decent, good 4-hour experience when I watch it. And it was just me in my dorm. Like there was nothing distracting me. So I guess for where I'm at right now, this is an air quotes ideal situation.
Yeah.
I watched it and my initial response was very weird because I just watched it and it was weird because when I came out of it, I didn't really know how to feel, because I'm like, I don't like it, but I don't immediately hate it like BVS, because in recent memory, Batman v Superman, when I rewatched it, was one of the worst movie experiences I had, and that's kind of part of what I was expecting with this, because I'm like, this is going to be Zack Snyder at like his absolute unhinged, which if he's been hinged before, what is he going to look like unhinged? So obviously I have a lot of fear going into that. But then I watched it and I wasn't like immediately like just recoiled by it. I'm like, okay, I didn't really want to rewatch it or anything, and I don't think that the high scores that people were giving it were justified at all, but I'm like, out of everything I've seen of him so far, oddly enough, this is the most watchable one. But then a couple of weeks passed, I didn't really think about it, and then we both watched the Justice is Gray version.
Yeah, we
and
did.
Then it's still weird because like even right now as I'm speaking, like I don't really know exactly where I land, because I'm like, I don't think it's good, but then like I'm not saying like this is just absolutely awful, but I feel like the more I do invest my time, the more I'm like, I don't like this, and like it's growing and growing in disliking. So like right now I would say it's a 1.5 out of 5, but who knows, it could go worse. We'll see.
It could always go worse. And
good?
I don't know. I do think a lot of thanks should be given to the fans who I guess, petitioned and urged this movie on to be released, because had it not been for them, you wouldn't have gotten it in the first place. And I think, regardless of whatever I say next, I think the fact that this exists at all in context of 2021 Hollywood is a miracle. And I think, even though I agree that Snyder fans can sometimes be overly aggressive and kind of annoying and advocating for their things being better than everything else on the merit of them being real cinema. Despite that, I respect them for getting an entire movie out just by their going about it. And I think it's very respectful in regards to Zack and how he was treated and how he couldn't finish it. I appreciate that. Just everything about this movie's existence I can respect. And Snyder himself, he's obviously a visionary. He knows what he likes. He has a consistent, I don't want to say vision because I've already said that, but like goal of how he wants to present things. And he was pulled away from the original 2017 project tragically. So I'm glad that he could finally get it done. I'm glad he could get it out there, and I'm glad people supported him. And I'm saying this because I don't want this to be interpreted as an attack towards his person.
Oh, of course not.
But there are, before I get into this, two major problems that I have with basically all of his movies. He is a visionary, for one thing, but looking at it, if I'm really being honest with you guys, and you can disagree with me, but I don't think Snyder in his DC movies, I guess, for sake of this, does anything with his superhero interpretations beyond just making them dark. Like, he kind of just goes with tone and kind of vague, oppressive, like somewhat Little Timmy's first like deep Tumblr post, kind of like thematic statement, and just stops there. Like, he doesn't really explore the themes he sets up at all. They're just kind of there to be brought up once and never again, just for the sake of pursuing this dark tone that isn't in service of anything. And I think new interpretations of something that are like of something as big as superhero movies are special. And I think if they can be explored in a different way, then it's always worthwhile. But Snyder always manages, to me, he always manages to just do the opposite and just stick with making everything more gray than it should be while blasting some sort of operatic theme song 19 times, instead of actually making something that feels like a different vision that supports its dark tone, if that makes any sense.
Right.
And it's also worth bringing... Sorry.
I mean, I was just going to quickly say, it's like, when it comes to, like, interpretations, I'm not saying that, like, you can't do that, but I think there's a certain point to where you just don't get the character. Because, like,
yeah,
Spider-Man, I think, is the perfect example, because between Toby, Andrew, and Holland, Tom, that is, I was not going to forget his first name. But the thing is that's, like, they're all radically different, because, like, Toby has the whole, like, really, really close to the comics where it's like, oh, I deliver pizza, I live here in, like, a New York apartment. But then you get something like Tom Holland's, where it's like, okay, so I'm in high school, I'm under the tutelage of Iron Man and all that. But at the end of the day, they're still, like, essentially the same character, just being explored through a different lens. And, like, there's still that same Spider-Man that you can find in the comics. The problem with Zack is that I don't think this is what Superman is. Like, take Man of Steel, for example. Because, like, Superman's, like, he's always optimistic. He's always, like, looking out for the future. Truth, justice, the American way. Like, there's always kind of, like, that chin-up attitude that, like, it's never going to be bad. Like, there's always hope to look for, right?
Gung-ho kind of going at it.
Sorta, yeah. I can kind of see where you're going. But, like, you watch Man of Steel. Like, I'm rewatching some of this content through another podcast called Every Frame of Pause. I do recommend them. They're really good. I like their content. But I'm, like, rewatching this Man of Steel footage, and it's just, like, it feels like the antithesis of what Superman is. Because it's, like, he's always saying dour stuff, and like his dad recommends the idea of like you shouldn't have saved a bus of kids just so you can protect your identity. There's all of these ideas that Snyder's trying to parade around as Superman that I feel like just contradict what Superman is. And I wouldn't be at odds against it if this was like an original story of Snyder's. But since this is what he's calling Superman, an already established and beloved character, that puts a lot of problems that just shouldn't be coming up.
Yeah, I can see that. That's fair.
That's like with like every single one of the heroes that he touches. Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman. Like, Wonder Woman's a crazy story because she's been in like 5 different DC movies, and it feels like in every single movie she's a different character. Like, take her in BVS.
Which I guess makes sense because she's like technically the oldest one and has experienced the most, but they don't really do anything to bridge those personalities.
Well, sort of, but it's like she feels so weird. Like, you watch her in BVS, you watch her in the Snyder Cut, and then you watch her in Justice League. Those are essentially at the exact same time, and they feel like she's like completely different in each movie.
Yeah.
And I just don't know what to say.
Yeah.
There's no consistency.
It's a mess. That DC EU.
Yeah, and that's
guess
another thing. Like, a weird thing I have with the Snyder Cut is that when people talk about this, it's not about the movie itself. It's about kind of like the culture around it. Like, not a lot of people are really talking about plot or characters or like filmmaking. They're talking about, oh, think about all the crazy stuff we did with release the Snyder Cut. Because a very interesting thing that I want to like see is the legacy of this movie. Is like, I want to see what happens in like 5 years when like people look back on when the Snyder Cut got released. And I want to see, because like, I think the initial response was just a lot of hype. So I want to see those same people like revisit this movie and see if they still say, yeah, this like still holds up. It's still a 4 out of 5. Or if they're like, oh, wow, I got so caught up in like being with the movement that I didn't actually realize that like this film is entirely different.
Yeah, and it's cool that it exists. It's like the story behind it is interesting, but that's not the movie. That's just
that
like
shouldn't
the reason
excuse
it exists.
the quality of the movie.
Those aren't
like,
the same thing.
Yeah, like if you had like your typical bad movie, but it's like, okay, but we have like all of this internet history behind it. That shouldn't excuse you from being a bad movie. That should be taken to the side and say, that's really cool about the history of this movie, but that shouldn't like substitute or excuse the movie and its qualities. You need to be able to distinguish the history with the movie itself.
Yeah. So I guess I'm not really on board with Snyder just making things dark, but also just dark and not doing anything with it. Like you said, there's no real consistency within his movies either. And then like, I guess I can't really say that I like the style either, because the style only seems to be slow motion and nothing else. Like nothing
10%.
about it ever feels distinct. It kind of, I feel really bad about saying this because I don't like bad mouthing people's work to this extent, but it honestly just kind of feels like a crutch or a gimmick or something that's just brought up ad nauseum even after like the joke or trick got old 30 minutes ago. Especially like in a 4-hour movie, that matters. And like the more of it you do, the more tired of it I get, and kind of start noticing, hey, how is this put together? And when that's all you have to offer, I don't like that. That might be why I like the black and white cut. Thinking about it, because I thought the
subtracts from a style.
Black and white thing kind of did more to help with style and like way it was kind of put together.
That's interesting. But yeah, like that's the thing you say. There's 2 more hours to the movie. That's kind of like the big thing about it. But here's the thing. It doesn't really feel like that 2 hours actually adds anything. Because here's the thing. I guess
we're going to jump into the actual movie now.
Yeah, if we want to. But like...
Let's do it.
Because that's the thing. When people like to talk about the Snyder Cut, they don't... Because like the big thing is like, okay, this isn't a brand new movie. This is obviously going to be the comparison to the original theatrical cut with Joss Whedon. But the thing you realize... like with a bunch of these comparison videos that I've been seeing is that like it's still the same movie. Like people are trying to pass this off as like a brand new thing, and it's not. if you strip down the Snyder cut and you strip down Joss Whedon's cut, at the end of the day, it's basically the same movie. It's like, okay, Batman's on Earth, Superman's gone, Batman needs to make a team. Batman tries to talk to Aquaman, doesn't work. Wonder Woman comes to Earth and teams up with Batman. Wonder Woman tries to talk to Cyborg, Batman meets up with the Flash. They all, like, very non-convincingly or begrudgingly team up to fight Steppenwolf, who's doing his own thing, in, like, an underground sewer, and then they sort of team up, not really, but they do. They dig up Superman's body and revive him. They have a fight. They do one more team up, and then they go fight Steppenwolf. That's essentially the plot of both movies, but they're just told differently.
But one of them is 4 hours long and the other is
exactly.
not.
And that's the thing. That extra 2 hours like feels like bloat. It doesn't feel like any actual substance is being added.
Well, yeah, you want to know the reason like it feels like bloat.
Slow motion.
It's because, get this, even with the entire vision intact, it's held back by a lack of planning on behalf of the DCEU. You have to spend at least like an hour establishing everything that you couldn't establish in the last cut because you didn't have any movies beforehand establishing it for you. So you kind of just have your work cut out for you, kind of trying to take care of all the setup, when looking at it in comparison to the MCU, this ideally would have been done 2 movies ago when we knew who the Flash was, before we saw him like do that slow-mo thing that was slow-mo.
Oh yeah, his whole introduction scene. I think that is one fair point to say. But I think another thing, even talking with just like this movie and not thinking about planning, is just how long certain sequences in this movie is.
Yeah.
Like, I think
Arrow.
the Arrow is probably the easiest comparison I can think of. Like, in both movies, there's like, to alert Wonder Woman to the situation after the Amazons lose the first mother box, it's like, okay, we got to send this arrow to Wonder Woman and she'll get all of the message. Like in Justice League, it's like, okay, light the arrow, shoot it, Wonder Woman sees it, picks it up, she's informed, goes to Batman. That's like 5 minutes, right? Mm-hmm. In Snyder Cut, you have a like 4-minute ceremony to like walk down, open up a box, pull out the bow, pull out the arrow, light the arrow, give it like a blessing, shoot it, watch it fly in the air for 20 seconds, light up a building, that's another 20 seconds. Wonder Woman then takes a minute to get alerted about the situation, then she has to go down to where the arrow was shot, then
While
she has to go to
her theme song.
No, well, maybe once, but that's another thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then she goes to an underground cavern, and then she learns about the history, and then she goes to Batman. That takes like 25 minutes.
To establish something that should have been done in like 5.
Exactly. And that's the thing with Justice League, because like it actually cuts down all of this stuff that's like, I guess it's fine to have on the side, but as its own, it just doesn't contribute.
Yeah.
You can effectively communicate the same message without having to take this much time, and it can be more interesting.
Mm-hmm. It's less confusing, but it almost makes things more confusing and just a chore to get through. Like, I wouldn't recommend either cut just from like a casual person's like eye. But if you have to watch one, like, I would almost recommend you just watch the old 2017 one, because it establishes the exact same things, but it looks slightly worse. It's kind of like more haphazard, and yet is 2 hours long instead of 4 hours long and gets the same point across.
Right. And because it's not like it does a whole lot to add stuff. Like, they don't really do anything with any of the characters aside from Cyborg, but then when you go with the 2017 version, Cyborg was literally nothing. And so for him to have like one backstory and one payoff, like, that's a step up, but then that's like saying, oh hey, like, I beat the worst team in the baseball league. That's like,
yeah, it's
like, yeah, it's an improvement,
nice,
but it's like such a small improvement in full context that
it
you're
almost
like,
feels
why
like
should we praise it?
Yeah.
And even then, like, the content itself isn't that great, because like it feels like such a simple like understanding of these concepts. Because with Cyborg's new backstory, it's like, okay, you are now the robot and you have all these new powers now. Like, you can control every single electronical device.
Something that is never brought into play with this, despite the world stakes.
Like, there's all this stuff where it's like, okay, you can launch like every missile in the world with the snap of your fingers. And like, in the final climax when they have to get through like a shield, that's like a perfect time to bring that out, and it's never brought up. Like, the only time they ever use it is like in that scene at the very end where it's like, okay, you can mess with all of the money in the world. And then he's like, okay, here's one diner waitress. Let me give her some money through like a made up sweepstakes at an ATM, and like that'll fix all the problems. But then you actually think about that and it's like, isn't the IRS gonna like look into that? So you've just, because that's the thing.
No, Grant, you don't get it. It's PayPal, but awesome.
No, it's not PayPal. It's the Gotham Bank, because we don't have product placement in this movie. But like that's the thing I'm seeing with Snyder. It's that like he feels like he's like creating this like grand solution, but then the issue is that he's making so many problems in the process.
Yeah.
It's like if you don't think about it, if like you turn your brain off and just go with it, it seems like this grand idea, but then like when you actually think about it and really put it into context, it just doesn't work. It's all wrong. Like if you go along with the movie's rules, I guess it's fine, but it feels like such low quality to what you could have.
Yeah, I guess you could say there's a more consistently dour atmosphere, but that only makes the attempts at humor, especially on behalf of Flash, more grating and jarring and irritating.
Yeah.
Like, God, anytime this movie tries to crack a joke, it falls flat on its face.
Definitely.
Uncanny Valley thing that doesn't work.
Of course, Snyder needs to, if he wants to do dark stuff, he needs to stay away from comedy, because it always fails.
Yeah.
But I think you mentioned The Flash, and like I know a lot of people say like, oh, I hated his performance. Well, no, they said they loved it, but like more like in-depth stuff where like Flash wasn't good. But the one thing that I want to say is I'm really mad because I wanted to see more with like his powers, which is I guess another critique I have with this movie is that when it comes to like
He's
them
poorly
actually
undefined
morally
with his powers.
Yeah, no, and not just Flash, like everyone. Like they have all of these powers that they can do a lot of creative stuff with.
They have 4 hours and they don't do anything with the powers.
Exactly. Like let's just focus on the Flash. So he doesn't get introduced until an hour and 8 minutes into the movie.
Chapter 3, right?
Yeah. I think he's the beginning of part 3. So right off the bat, you've already lost 25% of the movie. And so you do one, I would say the best thing he does with this character is his introduction sequence with the whole like, okay, like I'm going to save the woman from the car, but that's a whole comical thing because there's the guy that drops the burger and he doesn't stop or like do anything. Got his burger, man. He didn't because the sesame seed fell off the bun.
No.
But he has that whole one sequence, but then it's like, okay, my shoes rip off when I run, but not my clothes. So that's a weird inconsistency. And then like in the movie, he doesn't do like anything else until the final fight. Like in the one big fight and halfway through, like he pushes one bug out of the way, then he gives a morale boost to people climbing upstairs. And then he has this whole incident where it's like, oh no, there's rubble falling on people. And he stops all of the rubble, except for one piece at the very end, which Cyborg stops. And I'm like, what stopped you from saving that one piece? It's just so weird because it's like, I feel like now that a lot of the hype's died down, I hope that people can start to like see more of these fundamental problems. But the issue is that now that the Snyder fans have that, they're going to find ways to defend this. And I think it's going to be very shallow and veil and very thin, and they won't do a good job defending it. Yeah.
They also try in vain to like do more with like my dad is in jail subplot with Flash, but they still only have 2 scenes of it. It felt like they were going somewhere with that, but then he's just gone, and then he's back again at the end. And you're just left wondering why they gave you the time. And this is again because this Snyder Cut is still a victim of poor world building on behalf of the DCEU. This should have been like in a separate movie, so we're not cluttered with it here.
Yes. So, and even then, like you just get other stuff like, because that's the thing. Even with the new cut, like Batman and Wonder Woman still feel like very just like bland characters that have nothing. Aquaman still feels pretty much exactly the same, unchanged.
He has none of the personality from his own movie or inner conflict.
Exactly, which is weird because like James Wan, the director of the Aquaman movie, was like, Aquaman's a sequel to the Snyder Cut. So I'm like, well, did he get personality along the way off screen?
Can he be funny?
I wish, but
I don't know.
So the heroes obviously aren't good, but now we switch over to the villains, and like they didn't improve at all.
They didn't. They really didn't. Spiky Thanos, he's not present in the story like 3/4 of the time in this movie that is 4 hours long. He's only threatening when, like, I don't know, he shows up once, almost dies, shows up again, gets rejected by his boss, and is like, dang, maybe one day I'll prove myself. And he's only kind of threatening when, like, he kills Cyborg's dad. So, like, he's just kind of a chump.
Yeah, no, because both, like, I would say both versions of Steppenwolf, I guess the main villain, even though, like, the super big bad's Darkseid, but that's another story. Like, both versions of Steppenwolf aren't good. Because in the original theatrical cut, he just, like, has no motive. There's no connection to Darkseid or anything. It's just, I want to take over Earth. Or something. Like, and I genuinely don't care. Plus, I would say his facial design is actually better than Justice League, but I like the suit design more in Snyder Cut, even though I don't really care. Yeah. And then, but then the Snyder Cut, the whole thing is like, okay, because of an incident off screen, I have to make it up to Darkseid. And so then he has to take over Earth. But then, like, there's this other confusing thing because of a flashback where it's like, okay, Earth actually has, like, this MacGuffin that Darkseid wants. So that raises the stakes, even though that's so poorly communicated that even now when I watch that scene with that knowledge, I still don't get it. So, yeah. And then Darkseid's really bad because, like, Darkseid is supposed to be the Thanos equivalent. But in this movie, he gets destroyed in a flashback, like, genuinely, like, it's not like I had to be. It's like me
in Super Smash Bros. Like, it was brutal.
Oh, exactly. But it's like he gets shot once with an arrow and he takes damage. He gets hit in the shoulder once by an axe.
It wasn't even an arrow to the knee. Like, that shouldn't.
No, it was the other shoulder. And so, and then he has to be carried off of the field. Like, it's a really, really poor outing that's, like, honestly kind of embarrassing. Yeah. And then he doesn't do anything in the movie aside from just, like, sit and make Skype calls. And then he's like, okay, next movie. And he doesn't show up and he doesn't contribute anything. Which is a shame because when you see him in other, like, DC works where he is utilized properly, he's, like, a genuine threat. Like, the Justice League, like, can't keep up with him. This one dude, like Thanos, and he can be done well. But this movie does none of that. Yeah. And to see people, like, treat him as, like, a Thanos rival is comical.
It's so frustrating because this movie is 4 hours long and they took the time to add that subplot to justify Steppenwolf, or is that his name?
Yeah.
To justify Steppenwolf doing what he does, but because of how badly Justice League was planned and because of how much Zack Snyder needs to clean up after everything else, like, they might as well have not added that in because of all the other stuff that's just non-existent. You could cut it out and the movie would remain the exact same, minus, like, the foreshadowing for future movies. Yeah, that probably, like, aren't even going to happen now.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think now I'll just, like, talk about the ending, I guess.
Yeah, go for it.
So,
oh my god.
Yeah, so after the whole resolution, you get the epilogue, which I think is the worst part of the movie. Out of the 8 parts with the prologue, 6 parts in the epilogue. It's essentially like 4 endings stapled together with no cohesion. So it starts out with the, I guess, air quotes, normal ending, which is just a montage of, like, okay, here's what happened afterwards. And it's fine, pretty inoffensive. Nothing too substantial happens. Then there was the first in-credit scene with the original cut, which was the whole Lex Luthor breaks out and then he hires Deathstroke, except
with
that scene was
weird orchestrated music.
Yes, which is a shame because it's even more drawn out and yet does the exact same thing, so I don't care. But then it gets crazy because now we shift into, like, the big stuff that was, like, being promoted, because you start with the nightmare scene, and which is super, super problematic because, like, it doesn't really add anything in the grand scheme of things because it's like, it's this weird Zack Snyder vision. It's like, okay, so you thought Deathstroke wants to kill Batman? Well, now they're working together and they have this whole team. And so then, and, like, it feels like you're supposed to understand this, but you don't at all. Because it's like, Why is Flash wearing an Iron Man suit? Why is Cyborg lugging around a minigun? Why is Amber Heard joining the team? What's the Joker doing here? Like, there's all this stuff that just isn't explained. It doesn't add anything, and it genuinely, like, this 10 minutes can be cut out and you'd lose nothing. Like, you could probably just release it for free on YouTube and that would be better.
Like, it's not like it matters.
Exactly.
It's part of the universe. It hasn't been continuated and probably won't be.
Right. And you didn't even say we live in a society, so obviously that's worse.
Yeah. Like, what was... They couldn't even give us that.
Exactly. And then it gets worse because there's one more final ending with Martian Manhunter, which is another weird thing with this movie because apparently he gets introduced, and it's weird because apparently...
He's not in the movie at all.
No, in the context of the previous Snyder movies, it was like he was in disguise, like in close relations to Superman, but he didn't come out once.
Oh, what?
Yeah, because it's like... in the Snyder Cut, he disguises himself as, like, Superman's mom to give Lois a pep talk.
Yeah.
But then, like, after that scene, he's like, okay, I reveal myself super quick. But then he changes form into this, like, general dude. And that guy was in Man of Steel and BVS and, like, played a role. So that means that, like, in Snyder's vision, Martian Manhunter was a key player, but didn't do anything despite all of the conflict that's been happening so far.
Well, didn't Snyder also want this guy to be Green Lantern instead?
That's a whole other thing, because, like, you say that, like, a big draw about this is, like, it's supposed to be a Snyder's untouched vision, but even then it's not, because Snyder wanted to have a whole thing with, like, Green Lantern, but then he never got that, and, like, he even threatened to, like, not do the Snyder Cut because of that. But even now, with the supposed untouched version, that part even got touched as well. So we didn't get the complete vision. It's, like, more edited down by Warner Bros. So you lied, and people are falling for it, and it's a shame. And Snyder fans want you to believe otherwise, but I will not stand for it. I don't think Snyder is a good director. Please stop. Show me a good movie that Snyder has done. Please let that movie come forward. But until then, I don't think it's good. Please just stop. And I don't want it. I don't want to see it anymore. I don't want to think about it anymore. I want it to end.
It will never end.
I wish.
Unless it does. Yeah, I don't know. The only joke I liked in this movie was the time when, like, they played Wonder Woman's song when she showed up.
Oh, that's a whole other thing. Oh my goodness.
That was kind of funny.
Something like that.
Yeah. Speaking of bringing it back to the heroes, I think, like, this just doesn't fix anything about Justice League. The biggest thing being that,
really.
like, it's 4 hours long and they still managed to, like, not go into, like, the relationship between the protagonists of this cinematic universe at all.
Yeah.
There's no bond, there's no there's a reason for them teaming up, but it almost feels more like a business arrangement more than anything that actually, like, pays off on their characters. Like, nobody learns anything by the time this movie is over. Mm-hmm. I guess you could say that Cyborg was the only kind of good one, but even then, his actual
very questionable
arc was just
like,
subjugated to one flashback and, like, one, like, vision of his parents.
Yeah, one
leaving,
payoff,
and that's it.
Yeah, because the thing with Cyborg getting all this new content, there's actually, like, a lot of great stuff that can be explored, but that gets put to the side, and a lot of more problems arise from this new content.
Yeah.
And, like, that can be said with everyone else.
Superman is still vague and boring and not Superman.
Yeah, he feels he has, like, no, like, as much as they try to build it up, I feel like he didn't really have presence until it's like, okay, now at the end.
And he's just so OP that it doesn't matter.
Pretty much. And it's even dumber because then, like, Darkseid basically, air quotes, wins.
Yeah, that's another
But
reason
he doesn't do anything. He just sits there. He literally just sits there and does nothing, and we're supposed to take him as a threat.
Yeah. I don't know. This didn't fix anything.
It doesn't really. It's a different style. Instead of the weird colors
everything about
and all that.
They had 4 hours, and they literally, I don't think they fixed borderline anything besides maybe adding more lip service that might as well have not been there because they didn't develop it. Like, the 3 Rubik's Cubes of death, like, what is that? Why
That's
is
a
one of them
comic
in a
thing.
closet at Cyborg's house?
Yeah, that's the dumb thing though. Like everyone that like after the first flashback fight's like, we need to protect this with our lives. And the Amazonians are like, I guess the best because it's like we have a dedicated stadium where we always reside, which is fine. Not perfect, but definitely better because like Atlantis is like, okay, we'll put it on a pedestal.
Oh, that reminds me. Remember the time when, like, I guess Spiky Thanos was just gargling up water at one time? Yes. It was really funny.
Give me your water. And then Amber Heard, like, drains all the water out of his face in that fight. That's the highlight.
Oh, yeah. That and the Wonder Woman song.
Yes. And then Earth is like, just put it in a closet. Oh, no one's going to look there. Like...
Oh, yeah. What's going to happen?
There's just so many tiny mistakes in Snyder tropes that it genuinely just doesn't make a good movie. And I don't like this idea that people parade it around as a good movie. I hope people reconsider it, rewatch it. Because that's, again, what I'm saying about this movie's legacy. Is like, what are people going to...
is the key.
Like, what are they going to say if they had to rewatch this in, like, a decade? Like, are they going to, like, look forward to it? Because I think it's just the experience. It's not the actual movie.
What if this existed without the 2017 version?
Exactly. Like, if Snyder didn't have to step away, like, what would that have looked like? Mm-hmm. So, because I don't think...
And it's, again, it's 4 hours, and it's so busy, like, cleaning up after the DCU without actually being a movie that the actual story is poorly spaced out.
Yes.
There's literally no pacing. The writing is still awful.
Oof.
Jeez.
Yes.
The action scenes have so much space in between that, like, when you actually get to them, they're so underwhelming, given the scale that this movie is going for. Like, again, I could respect the existence of this version of Justice League, but that's not the quality of Justice League. It's
like
still
people...
Justice League, but 4 hours longer and almost nothing was fixed.
Right. It's like people aren't praising the Snyder Cut. They're praising the fact that hashtag release the Snyder Cut was seen through.
Yeah.
So, not a good movie. I'm sorry.
I'm just exhausted now. This was a lot more fun to talk about than watch.
Yes. And shorter.
Yeah. Final rating?
I'm still like throwing it around in my head, but I give it a 1.5 out of 5.
All right. This is basically the same movie, but like give or take a few things, but like basically the same problems overall. So I'm just gonna stick with a 1 out of 10, not a 0, because again, the context surrounding it is respectable, and I'm glad Snyder finally came back and completed what he wanted to make. But still,
too bad.
Like, just don't watch it. They're both bad.
Yeah.
Anything else to add?
Is there? Because I don't really have anything.
I mean, one fun thing I want to do before ending off this portion is putting a script doctor through this. So, is that okay?
Okay, what do you have in mind?
Yeah, so, assuming we were the writers for this.
Okay.
In 2017, Snyder Cut doesn't exist. We can't change the past, so Man of Steel, Suicide Squad, Batman v Superman, and Wonder Woman still exist. We are the ones tasked with making a Justice League movie. Okay. Now, we don't really have, like, I don't want to make this like another hour because this isn't going to exist at all. So a few things to aim for this to make it interesting. 3 changes of the existing 2017 version, but 1 keep.
Okay, so change just 3 things, keep 1 thing.
Yeah, 3 changes, 1 keep, just for the script doctor thing.
Just like general stuff?
I think the keep should be the runtime.
I think that can go in of itself, like keep it around the 2-hour mark. I would say that.
Yeah.
For me, the one thing I say I would keep is there's actually like some character development. Like this feels like the first time they were like starting to get the characters, and it's not perfect, but it's much better than Snyder. Because like Superman's 1 interaction in the final fight feels so much more in line with his character than anything Snyder's produced. Mm-hmm. So personally speaking, keep that stuff.
Okay, so we can keep that. I think the one thing we should change is the overall series of events, because if we go for something like a 4-hour cut, it's just going to become unbearable. So I think one thing you could maybe do if you want to make it interesting is kind of throw us for a loop and kind of pull an Infinity War Endgame kind of thing where the first part of the movie, the thing that we're writing, just ends after they resurrect Superman and he's gone.
Okay. Yeah. Like
That I
kind of
think that would
pad it
make
out.
the actual story a lot more manageable.
Yeah, that's fair. The one thing I would say that I would want to change, and like this is kind of something I'm now realizing with like DC movies, especially with their villains, is that they have the worst like motivations and end games. Because it's like, when I'm thinking about it, like Zod and Man of Steel is like, I want to terraform Earth. I'm like, I don't care.
And maybe recruit Superman to my side, but I'm kind of inconsistent about that.
Yeah. And so, well, because that's the thing, like looking at Marvel movies, like they can be really straightforward, but like really easy to like get behind. It's like, okay, like Guardians 2, I have the extension, and so I'm gonna like take
like
over
even
all these
Ego, who is like just universally a terrible villain, still wants to like bond with his son and like hold on to him to the point where like, yeah, I can understand where he's coming from, and I see
Yeah,
that.
exactly. Like as a person, he's terrible because he's like doing all this crazy stuff, and it's like, okay, now here's the dark side of my history. But like,
Yeah.
there's still like there's more to his character than just evil dude that wants to do thing to Earth because Earth is special. That feels like really, really bad writing. It's like a special kind of bad, not like lazy summer blockbuster bad, like Snyder type bad.
Like, it doesn't have to be like something that makes you sympathize with the villain.
Yeah,
it just
like-
has to be something. So maybe one thing to make Steppenwolf, that's his name, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I forgot again.
you're good, you're good.
Maybe one thing to make like it more understandable. Maybe if like he doesn't bring Earth to its knees or something, he is going to be executed. Maybe that's his motivation. He like just like straight up doesn't want to die.
Well, that's kind of what they do with the Snyder Cut, actually, except not to the same extent that you are saying. Like, he just wants to get back home, but it's not like, oh, fail and you die. But that could be
Yeah.
a good way to like raise the stakes for his character.
So
I
like
would say.
he's doing it more so out of desperation more than any personal bias against Earth because of like an anti-life
it's
symbol
just
that wasn't
business.
explained well.
So
I think that would help.
yeah,
And that would also make him more present in the movie too.
and I would say another change is get more creative with your powers. Like do some stuff with Cyborg, and like do stuff with Flash and Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and like maybe have some more Batman gadgets. Because it's like the Flash, because super speed is like one of, if not my favorite superpower, because you can do like a lot of crazy stuff with like messing with time and all that.
Yeah.
And to see the Snyder Cut's like really poor use of like time travel, where it's like there's no consequences and like he can just do it whenever he wants with no repercussions whatsoever, is just really poor writing.
Okay.
So I
I'm
wanted
thinking
like
about that and I agree with you. Sorry, what were you saying?
I'm just like saying like you could do a lot of fun stuff with like the Flash. Like he runs so fast, like he could like go back in time, but then there's like a consequence where it's like he's coughing up blood a little bit. So like have more creativity with your powers and make watching the Flash in this movie just like run around in a circle for pretty much the entire end conflict, only to then like have all of that ruined, to then like time travel with no buildup whatsoever, is really unsatisfying.
Yeah. And thinking about that, I agree with it so much that I almost think it would be more beneficial if that was established in like his own movie before getting to Justice League. So
Yeah.
I think for the final change of 3, so our 3 so far are better Steppenwolf motivation. What was the other one?
More creative use of powers.
Okay. And then finally, I think the most ambitious one might just be don't have Cyborg or Flash in there at all because they haven't gotten their own movie yet. Just have it, or Aquaman. Just have it Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman having to work together, duking it out with Steppenwolf. And so that way, not only do you have less characters to work with, you can also, since we know them, it's more reasonable to like spend all this time focusing on them, and then you can do a better job actually focusing on them and giving them an arc.
That'd be very interesting from like a film standpoint.
Yeah, and
'cause
then
that would
just
definitely mess with like the comics kind of continuity. Because like they're all big players, but maybe you could do like a different iteration where it's like this is like early Justice League
Yeah, and
before
then
like a completed version. Because like Green Lantern is part of the Justice League, but we haven't seen him at all, so who knows?
yeah, so like start
So.
small, give Flash and Cyborg and Aquaman their own movies, give Green Lantern his movie, Shazam has a movie, and then introduce them in the second Justice League movie.
Yes.
Like, I don't know. That seems better. Okay, so I guess final answers for Script Doctor are better usage of powers. Are you okay with just dropping Flash and Cyborg?
I would say drop Cyborg because I think Cyborg has, or Flash. I mean, yeah, drop one of them.
Yeah.
I personally, I guess I would want a Flash solo movie because I want him to explore his powers more. Because personally speaking, I like super speed more than like the whole Cyborg like technology. But I honestly think like just plan it out, have it more condensed. Like you're right, those three things we're saying, I would think would fix the problems that we have.
And then I guess the one keep is either the runtime or
Superman's character from the Whedon cut.
Yeah.
But better
Basically.
writing. But
so that's that. I just
what
thought
you
that was
gonna
a
do?
fun thing we could do because it's one thing to like say what we don't like. It's another thing to like make suggestions and constructive criticism.
throw in
So that's,
our
I guess,
perspective.
Yeah, that's what we would have liked to see out of a Justice League movie. But if you liked this too,
Hey,
good
go
on
for
you.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't be
That's
toxic
enough.
on Twitter.
That's enough
Don't do it.
on the Snyder. Oh, no. Yeah, PSA, bad idea. Like, it doesn't help anyone.
Don't do it. Don't contribute. So.
Oh, man. All right, well, I guess the only place left to go after the Snyder Cut is...
Closing remarks.
Closing
Sam.
remarks. In
Yes.
conclusion. Sorry, I was doing the pause.
You're
just
fine,
for
you're
the final
fine.
one.
Uh-huh.
I guess to make this full circle, superhero culture was basically the reason Snyder Cut exists. Would you agree?
I would say maybe part of it's actually the pandemic. Because, like, think about it. Warner Brothers didn't really have anything to, like, release. And, like, there was a huge thing. Like, there's obviously the release, the Snyder Cut fan base and all that. So
Yeah.
they're like, okay, we aren't working on anything. And we basically have this project that, like, we could just throw a little extra money towards and finish. So why not? So
Yeah.
I think that could always be another aspect to why this was released. But who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? And then I guess to summarize that, I think for a final say on theaters, since we talked about that, I think they're just going to continue trying to hold on financially until the end of COVID.
Yeah.
Kong vs. Godzilla gave them a bit of a break. I'm not sure how long they're going to hold out for after that, though.
Yeah, that's fair.
And then I guess that's all I got. Do you have anything? A message for the viewer? Something you want to add to what we've said already, or what?
I have one last thing. All right.
Okay.
Okay. You watching this video, if you somehow made it this far,
Me?
I am pointing. No, not you, the viewer.
Dang
Sorry, but you, the viewer. How would you like to have your own input into our podcast? So, what we were wanting to do is, kind of at the end, we do like kind of a Q&A. Just like you, the audience member, can just like leave a comment and like ask a question. It could be anything, but we will pick which ones we want. But I was thinking that like at the end, after we talk about our big movie, we pick like a couple of questions and then we just answer them, kind of like more of a like free form, just kind of answering what you want to know from us about anything you ask, with obvious like restrictions, not total freedom. But this is just kind of a PSA because this is like our first couple of episodes, so obviously we don't have like an establishment. But this is your call to join our podcast. All you have to do is just leave a comment. That's it. Just it could be anything, but obviously like we'll look over them, we'll pick which ones we want to talk about, but you can obviously enter your chance to win this sweepstakes, I hope.
Oh, yeah. We'll see how that goes.
But yeah, that's kind of all I wanted to say, my little PSA on
Oh, man.
the
We
comments.
clocked in at 2 hours and 18 minutes on my end.
Same, 2 hours, 18 minutes, and 30 seconds.
Nice. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Thanks
Well-
for joining me, Grant. It was nice to finally get this off our chests. I'm assuming.
Yeah, on the second episode when we
Yeah.
haven't established a proper formula to our episodes, so
Oh,
it's
man.
yeah. See, we're setting the seeds, Zach. This is how you do development in multiple movies, not just
Time
one.
capsule.
So
Oh man,
But
if you
yeah.
somehow listened this far, thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for
hopefully
tuning
you
in.
enjoy this. If you don't, thanks for listening anyway. This is just something we like to do because we want to do it for funsies, so it means a
hope you're-
lot that you even so much as clicked on it.
I hope you're just having the best day right now or night. I don't know when you're watching this, but I just hope you're being the best person that you can be, and I wish the best on you.
But for now, just get out there, have some fun. Well, maybe stay safe.
get some
because of
rest if you're in
COVID,
bed,
but,
who knows?
Yep.
Or we to say.
sleep.
Yeah. but-
And make sure if you have a movie that's 4 hours, it's 4 hours for a good reason.
right.
When you watch the Snyder Cut. Oh, you've wowed your last Zowie, isn't that right, Mario?